a lot on Twitter.
Yeah,
I get trolled. I mean, you have guests. You have guests who come on your podcast and savage me on the podcast, and then troll me endlessly on Twitter. And
you mean like Abby Martin?
Well, she doesn't troll. I mean, she
doesn't troll you.
She hates me, but she
doesn't know you.
I haven't noticed her trolling me. But no,
if you got in a room with her, everybody would calm down. She just has. There's people that have radical misconceptions of who you are.
Yeah,
I'm sure you heard the Josh Zepp's Patton Oswalt thing. Or Patton Oswalt, don't listen to it.
Okay.
Because he went off the rails.
Okay,
Patton went off the rails like Hannibal style.
Yeah. Are you thinking of Andy Kindler?
Oh yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Did I say Patton Oswalt?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Patton.
That's good.
So sorry. How did I connect
Patton
Patton
and
Oswalt? Yeah, Patton's great.
Good.
Well, Patton's very smart and very reasonable. As is Andy for the most of the time.
But so this
Andy's kind of crazier.
I discovered this very late. So I kept seeing this guy. I didn't know who he was. I kept seeing him in my Twitter feed.
Andy Kindler.
And then I realized, wait a minute. He seems to be, he's an established comic. He seems to be friends with people who I really respect, who I don't know, Sarah Silverman, who I don't know personally. I mean, we've communicated a little bit on Twitter, but it's like I'm just nothing but a pure fan of Sarah. Jim Gaffigan, other big comics who I totally respect. I don't know how close he is with these people, but he has endless energy for vilifying me as a racist and as a bigot, right? I mean, he's a madman. And I did a search of his Twitter feed, and he's got hundreds and hundreds of tweets where he's going after me in the most retail way. So, for instance, like I tweeted out, can anyone recommend 500-seat halls in all these cities? And I think your friend, is Duncan Trussell a friend of yours? Okay, so Duncan wrote back saying, oh yeah, DM me, I've got a great place in Boston or something. And then Andy Kindler jumped into that thread, talking to Duncan, saying, don't help him, Duncan, he's a bigot, right? So Andy Kindler's just got endless energy for this. And then I looked at what he was doing, and he had been doing it for years, and I wasn't aware of it.
Just to you?
Just to me and Bill Maher. He hates Bill Maher. But then you've got another guy on this podcast, Hunter Matz.
Okay. I had him on once.
Okay, so he was on here, and I actually had to go back and watch what he said here because I had been getting so much of this on Twitter. And I mean, it's incredibly common. People are tweeting at me saying, why won't you debate Hunter? It's Matz, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why won't you debate Hunter Matz? So I went back and looked at what he said here. Half of it, frankly, didn't make any sense. But his attacks on me on Twitter are the most juvenile. It's like the idea that he thinks this is a way he's going to establish a conversation with me by sending me 2 tweets and then sending me 400 which say you're scared to debate me, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean,
I think
it's
Hunter's
crazy
on the
behavior.
spectrum.
I don't know.
Very, very, very smart guy, but taking a terrible socially retarded approach to establishing a debate. And I've contacted Brian Callen about this, and Brian Callen contacted Hunter about this and was like, what the fuck are you doing? And he continues to do it.
It's crazy behavior. Yeah.
He said he wouldn't do it anymore, and then he did more.
I mean, every time I look, I see him somewhere in there. But then there's this guy, Mike Cernovich, who's actually has effects on the real world. I mean, Mike Cernovich is, again, he's a Twitter troll. Again, one of these other guys who's challenged me to debate him, and there's absolutely no possibility of a profitable dialogue.
You need to spend less time on Twitter.
Yeah, listen to you.
No, but Cernovich was just on 60 Minutes. I mean, he's in the world, and he's affecting people's perception of Trump.
I'm just talking about your psyche.
Oh yeah, well,
for sure, right?
Yes. So to come back, it's not. Yeah, it's not. The 9 times out of 10, looking just makes me think. I mean, it's an illusion, because if you met most of these people, if they came up to you at a conference or at a book signing or so, after a gig of yours, and you had more information about them, you saw all of the, all of the crazy coming out, you would say, I don't have to pay any attention. There's no reason to pay attention to what this guy is saying. Whereas on Twitter, everything has the same stature. So whether it's a Washington Post columnist who's tweeting at me, or some guy like Hunter who I have no idea who he is, but he's telling me I got something wrong. Everything has the same stature, and there's no signal to noise sense of what
Well, first of all, you fucked up because you talked about them. Both of them. You said Candyman 5 times, and now you got a problem. You talked about him right now on this podcast.
Well, this is the first time I've ever mentioned the guy.
Well,
but I
should have talked to you before this.
I'm bringing it to you because you created it. I mean, it was his podcast with you that kicked this whole thing off.
I certainly didn't think that Hunter was going to do that, and I know for a fact that Hunter's actually a fan of yours. I think what Hunter's trying to do...
He's got a strange way of showing it.
I don't think it's a smart way. I think what he's trying to do, and he when I was trying to hold his feet to the fire and get some sort of a logical definition of what you do wrong, he really didn't have anything.
Yeah, but he thinks he does, and he...
But did he, when I talked to him about it?
No,
did you,
no.
What did he say?
And half of what he said about Dawkins and me was totally wrong. Half of what he said about the relevant biology was wrong. I mean, he doesn't have his shit together, but he thinks he does. And there's a level of arrogance and incivility and just a kind of a lack of charity in interacting with other people's views, which is now kind of getting rebranded on the internet as just American can-do chutzpah, right? And it's like it's given us Trump, right? It's like Trump is the ultimate example. He's like the cartoon version of, a person who doesn't know anything relevant to the enterprise, who doesn't show any aptitude for civilly engaging with differences of opinion, and this thing gets amplified to the place of greatest prominence now in human history. Everyone's on social media, or many people on social media, are playing this same game, and Cernovich is another just malignant example of this, where you have someone who's got a fairly large following. I mean, it's not as big as yours, but it's a very engaged following. I mean, this whole Trump phenomenon has shown me that a small percentage of one's audience can have like 100 times the energy of the rest of your audience. Like whenever I went against Trump on my podcast, this is still the case, the level of pain it causes in the sort of the feedback space is completely out of proportion to the numbers of people who are on that side of the argument, and it's incredibly energized. But it's just this weird style of self-promotion where all you do is that you brag about yourself, you say you're the best, you're someone who has absolutely no basis to back up those claims, and yet an audience thrills to that level of arrogance and empty boast. It's just bizarre. But
there's a big issue, I think, online where people find like-minded people, and then they develop these communities where they just support each other, and they just have these gigantic groups of people. I mean, not even necessarily gigantic, but groups of people that find any subject. Like for me, you know what it is? Mm-hmm. Flat Earth.
Right.
I get trolled by people all day that claim I'm a sellout because I don't believe the Earth is flat. This is real.
Yeah. But don't you think there's a I think this phenomenon that you're describing is both has really serious negative consequences, but also has some beauty on by the same token. You've got parents all over the world who've got children with rare disease, but they can connect on the internet and bond over that and share tips and doctors and all that stuff. So it's actually, they're both outgrowths of the same kind of phenomenon, but it can be, we see the really difficult consequences of this in our politics right now, et cetera, et cetera.
I think we're talking about two different things,
You think so?
I'm talking about confirmation bias. I'm talking about a bunch of people that get together and say, yeah, obviously I'm woke and the Earth is flat and pay attention. There's an
technology allows
there's an ice
both.
wall. Yes. But they're different things. The groups of people that will find, communities where maybe your child has autism and there's some sort of an issue that can be mitigated with diet, and parents have had, some success with that, and they could, give you some enlightening information, and you can communicate with each other, and that's nice. It's beautiful. Some of the hashtags that people use that they find, search through, it's great. But these little communities that you bond, they're not. Those ideas. There's no confirmation bias in those ideas, but there's confirmation bias in the idea that Trump is the man. There's confirmation bias in the idea that the Earth is flat. And if you just huddle in those little communities and just bark the same noises that everybody else barks, there's some sort of sense of community in that too.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely.
And people love that. They
Yeah, they do.
love being a part of a fucking team, even if it's a stupid team of green frogs.
And you don't
They
have
love
to.
it.
You don't have to listen to other people's views, and
No.
you get deeply, deeply entrenched. I think we're seeing this all through our politics and media right now.
Well, you also see when you go to those people's pages, which I do often. I don't engage with people in a negative way online very often, very, very
Now,
rarely.
do you not look at your ad mentions, or you?
I
you
do a little bit,
Okay.
but you know what, man? I just like to just go on about my day.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
found that the negative consequences that you're discussing.
It's rare that I go down the rabbit hole and I go for days without looking at ad mentions. I mean, it's more that if I publish something, if I ask for feedback, I want to see the feedback.
It's not
And that's been
necessarily
useful.
that there's anything wrong. I mean, just as your friend, I mean, I feel like there's nothing wrong with. I look at my ad mentions, but
But you
I just-
function in a very different space. I mean, you're not pushing controversial stuff out there.
No,
that-
definitely
Right.
not. Definitely not. So I agree.
I stay
But I'm just-
offline. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just more worried about again
Health.
back to your psyche. Like
Yeah.
it feels like you need a little bit of a middle ground.
Yeah.
I stay offline after UFCs. For the most part, that's when I get the most crazy people, especially if there's any sort of a controversial decision.
But are they criticizing you for something you said? Or,
they get fucking mad at my commentary. They'll just disagree with who I thought won, and then they're so fucking vicious about it. I'm just like, just yell, yell in your own.
So you don't want to
space.
see any of that.
There's too many people. You're dealing with millions and millions of people, and who knows how many of them are rational. When you're dealing with, there's a bit that I had on one of my specials where I was talking about the number of people that are stupid in the world. Like if you get a room full of 100 people, the idea that one person isn't a complete fucking idiot, of course.
Well, you're being very charitable.
Right, I'm being
More
charitable.
than one, yeah.
But if you do that, we're talking about 300 million people in the United States plus. That's 3 million fucking idiots.
Yeah.
So if you have 3 million fucking idiots and all your ad mentions, if you look at your ad mentions and 3 million comments are saying you're a fucking moron, and it's just too many people. The numbers they're not manageable. The numbers of human beings you interact with online are not manageable. So anytime anything gets negative or insulting, and I just check out. I just next. I don't pay attention because you can't. But if I fucked up, and I know I fucked up, I think one of the most important things that I do is I admit that I fucked up. And I talk about it, and I apologize, and I say, look, I'm flawed, I'm human, I made a mistake. Sorry. And then just step away.
Yeah.
Like, let the fucking chaos ensue in the comments. Let all the people call you a shill and a whatever. Let all that happen, but don't let it in. Like, you're letting it in, and then you stew on it, and you have to bring up, Hunter and all these other people, and that's you're letting them way too deep.
No.
You're
I
getting
mean,
in too deep.
perhaps I gave a false impression of how under my skin this has gotten.
Just the fact that you talked about it at all, though, is too much.
Well, no, but I think it's of huge consequence. I mean, I think it's given us Trump this way.
Yes.
This way, the fact that this style of communication is attractive to so many people. The fact that you can the bluff and bluster and empty boast and lies without being caught in lies without consequence.
Right.
The fact that people never admit mistakes. I mean, what you just described, you do, and which I do. You make a mistake, you want to hear about it, you want to correct it as quickly as possible, right? That is the antithesis of what we're seeing now in this space. I mean, when has Trump admitted a mistake?
But
right?
isn't the difference being that neither you nor I have any desire to control anything? Like, I don't want to be the leader of anything.
Well, no, but you want you want good ideas to
Right,
win,
sure.
right? And you want the truth to win. You want the truth to propagate. You
Right.
want facts to propagate. You want to be able to correct errors, whether they're your own or others, especially when they're consequential. And I think that we need a common ethic where lying has real consequences. I mean, so many people are trying to figure out what's the antidote to fake news. Well, one antidote is to be caught lying has to be devastating for your career, right? Like politically, journalistically, academically, as a public intellectual. I mean, to be caught in a whopping lie will require at minimum some serious atonement.
And historically, it has been the case.
Absolutely. Tradition
And yet
it
we
still
have-
is in many spheres.
We have slipped those rails just to a degree that I'd never thought possible.
We're
right?
going light speed right into the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about people have figured out how to use dishonesty as extra fuel. I mean, it's like the nitrous oxide boost in those hacky cars, right? It's like we can use this stuff, right? And the way you behave when you get caught, which is to say, just go fuck yourself, just redounds to your credibility among your tribe, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this guy is so powerful, he so fully doesn't give a shit what people think that he can catch him in a lie and just watch how he gets out of it. But that's what. So when I was bringing up these guys like Cernovich, I mean, this is. I trolled Cernovich. I decided to troll Cernovich one day, and I thought it was hilarious, and it was just nothing but fun. So there was nothing toxic about that.
He's obsessed.
Yeah. But the thing that bothers me is that this has real political consequences, and
Do you think that this is a time period where we're in this sort of adolescent stage of communication online, where you can get away with saying things that are dishonest, and that there might be some sort of a way to mitigate that in the future? There might be some.
I don't think we should act like dishonesty and bluff and bluster, to use a phrase you used before, is somehow new to the human repertoire. I get that.
The acceptance of it seems to be, though.
I think we're in a period where that is true, and I think it is aided and abetted by technology and the social networks. I agree with your diagnosis on many levels, but I was having an interesting conversation with a guy that you introduced me to, Joseph Goldstein, who's a eminent meditation teacher. Had become my meditation teacher, old friend of Sam's, and we were talking about the current political situation. He used a phrase that I like when I was asked him what he thought about it. He said, "I'm kind of slotting into geological time." And I think that actually makes some sense. Not to say that we
What does that mean?
Meaning that I'm just viewing it from I'm widening the lens to look at the broad scope of human history to see that, over time, we've got these ups and downs.
He's getting to the top of the mountain near Denver with a big bucket of margaritas.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
They're slotting in, they're slotting in. Yeah.
Just look down with binoculars, watch the bombs go off, learn how to get water out of the ground, get a solar-powered generator.
And make good margaritas.
Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't seem to me that this is sustainable. It feels like this is just going to be some spectacular moment in history where people were rah-rah Nixon, and now they look back and go, my God, Nixon was a fucking liar and a buffoon.
Well, take this. I mean, this is a point I've made before, and I don't think it's original with me. I think other people have made it. But my claim is that if Trump were 1/10 as bad, he would appear much worse, because like everything he does now is appearing against a background of so many lies and so much craziness that you can barely even weight its value. But, I mean, and this is one of the things I find useful about Twitter, because I follow some very interesting people, and so Ann Applebaum, the Washington Post columnist, who's just awesome on Twitter. Everyone should follow her. She just keeps hammering Trump with her own points and other stuff that she finds, and she just pointed out that, did anyone notice that Trump threatened a war with North Korea 2 days ago? It was in the Financial Times, and yet no one can talk about it because no one believes him, right? It's like we have a president whose speech has now become so denuded of truth value, right? Perceived truth value, that he can say, if China doesn't handle North Korea, we're going to, and no one even feels like they have to ask a follow-up question on that topic, because everyone assumes it's an empty bluff. I mean, just imagine, just step back into the previous presidency. If Obama had said, if China doesn't handle North Korea, we will, right? That would be top of the fold. This is all we're talking about today, right? This is it just comes out of a blizzard of inanity and craziness that he's going after Meryl Streep. He's lying about Obama wiretapping him. Now he's threatening war with North Korea, and nobody knows what to talk about. So it's like the consequence of this is we have a president who not only can he not be trusted to tell the truth, he can be trusted to lie whenever he thinks it suits his purpose. And now the state of mind that everyone's in, including the press, in listening to him is to take potentially the most serious things in the world not seriously, and the least serious things in the world, like Meryl Streep or what he thinks of her acting, that dominates a whole news cycle. It's very upside down. It seems to me to be quite new, as opposed to lies are perennial, but I feel like we're in a very different space now with the consequences of misinformation.
We certainly are. Do you think that they're connected to what we were talking about before, where you said that people would rather be electrocuted than to be alone with their thoughts? That we have gotten to this weird place with our society, with our civilization, where we've made things so easy. We've made people so soft, so dependent upon technology. We've slotted out these paths, these predetermined patterns of behavior for people to follow, where they can just sort of plug into a philosophy, whether it's a right-wing one or a left-wing one, with very little room for personal thought at all. Very, very little room for objective reasoning. We sort of made it easy. We babied them.
I do think that it's imperative, if you want to be a good citizen, to have a varied media diet. You're not going to have a clear view of the world if all you're reading or the New York Times.
Right.
I think nothing against the New York Times or Breitbart, but I think you need to read many things and follow many different sorts of people on Twitter, not just because you want to troll them, but because you actually want to listen to what they have to say and take it seriously.
Well, the New York Times really fucked up. Where they really fucked up is where they said that they're going to, after the election, they're going to rededicate themselves to reporting the truth. And what? Why did you say that? I wish I was there. I wish I was in the office.
Why? That just sends the wrong message.
Well, as if they weren't into the truth
yes.
before. Right.
Well, it says they were biased.
Yeah.
They fucked up.
Yeah.
They had an idea.
The truth is they were biased.
Yes, you're right.
The thing is, the enemy was so grotesque in this case that it was impossible to not have been biased. Seemed an abdication of responsibility. I feel it myself. Everything I say against Trump from a Trump person sounds like mere partisan bias. I've got zero connection to the Democratic Party or to. There's no partisan bias. 100% of what I want to say about Trump does not apply to some other Republican who is just stands for things that I don't, policies I might not like. It's a completely unique circumstance, and so it's true that to read the New York Times for the longest time, it was reading like just the entire thing had become the opinion page on the Huffington Post or something.
Yeah, I just feel like at this stage of our society, there's real consequences to the infantilization, if that's actually a word, of human beings in our culture. We've made it very easy to just go to work and just get home and watch television and just not pay attention to anything and not read anything and not really think and then be manipulated. I think it's incredibly easy to manipulate people, especially people that are aware that they don't have a varied media diet, people that are aware that they don't have a real sense of the world. And it seems daunting to try to take into consideration, what is involved in foreign policy? What is involved in dealing with Russia? What is involved? How do you negotiate with North Korea? Fuck, it's too much. Put it in the hands of the strong man.
I think this is true on both sides of the spectrum, though.
Yeah,
because I think you've got folks who slot into just a media diet where they're just hearing things on the left and they're not curious about, or I guess just not curious enough to hear things from a different perspective, unless it's just some right-wing palooka who comes on and then they beat him up. So I really do think, and I think it places this is going to be a self-serving argument, but I do think it places increasing importance on media outlets like the one for which I work to be really vigilant about being seen as fair arbiters of fact.
Yeah, I think the consequences have never been greater for that. And
Absolutely.
I think the reason that so many people on the right, so many Trump supporters, feel like they're right is because it has been proven that the media was biased and that they did get it all wrong, and they were absolutely wrong when it came to who was going to win. I mean, Huffington Post had some ridiculous thing where it was the night of the election. They said that Hillary had like a 98% chance of winning or something crazy like that.
Well, I think there were some polls that were bad, but the poll, like because I remember this because I sent out a tweet which said, like, bye bye Donald or something but the day of. But when I did that, I mean, that wasn't a prediction. I mean, the polls that I was going by, that most people were going by at that point, it was like 80-20, or at best 75-25 that she was going to win. Now, that's not, I mean, you roll dice for a few minutes, you realize a 20% chance comes up a lot.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, so I guess this is not infinitesimal odds.
Plus Florida.
Yeah, but you should tell the story about what it was like to anchor the broadcast.
Yeah, so I was anchoring the ABC News digital coverage that night, they give you the exit polling. You're not supposed to report it publicly, but the exit polling that we were seeing before we went on the air late in the day really made it seem like it was going to be a Clinton landslide. You have all these folks who say, look at the crestfallen faces of the journalists because they're so upset that Trump won. Certainly, that was not the case for the folks on my set. It was that we didn't see it coming. We weren't prepared for it. Everything that we were seeing in terms of the math made it look like this was a Clinton victory, a shoe-in. It was just about tying a ribbon around it. So when the night became long, there was just confusion about what was going on.
How did they get it so wrong?
I think it actually goes back to what Sam was saying before, that people think when you see numbers like 70% odds that Clinton's going to win, 80% odds that Clinton's going to win, that she's definitely going to win. But there's room there for Trump to win. A lot of room. Yeah, a lot of room there for Trump to win.
20% comes up all the time.
It's Russian roulette.
Yeah. I mean, those are bad. If it's Russian roulette, those are bad odds, right? You're not going to take that. You're not going to put a single bullet in a 5-chamber gun and
spin it. Yeah. No,
that's Deer Hunter.
Yeah. That's really good odds.
So
you're going to get shot.
I don't think so. It's so much about blaming the polls as it was blaming the overall tenor of the coverage, which made it seem like Clinton was inevitable.
Yeah. It was so shocking.
That's a hit. That's a hit. I think that we can and should take.
Yeah.
We definitely, I think we weren't giving the 20 or 30% chance a serious enough look.
What is your thought, as being someone who covers these things, what is your thought about the Electoral College? Do you think that that's an antiquated idea? And that, I mean, it was kind of established back when you really needed a representative, because otherwise you would have to get on a fucking horse and ride into Washington, and it would take 6 months.
I can see it. You can make very powerful arguments that it's a deeply problematic institution. I can see the power of those arguments for sure. There are people who make similar arguments about the United States Senate.
Yeah.
There was a piece that ran in the New York Times in their Sunday Weekend Review not long after the election, making the case that the angriest people in America actually should be those who live on the coast, because it's taxation without representation. That the people who live on the coast are paying more in taxes, but they have less representation actually in Washington. Again, that's not research that I've done, but it's an interesting idea.
Have you ever seen anybody present any sort of a logical argument that there really shouldn't be a president anymore? That the idea of having one alpha chimp run this whole thing seems pretty outdated.
I'm just not sure that he runs the whole thing.
But he's got a lot of influence.
He has an enormous amount of influence. But we're seeing, Donald Trump is seeing right now the limits of presidential power.
He
couldn't get his the healthcare bill that didn't even make it, wasn't even close to what he promised in some ways wasn't even close to what he promised on the campaign trail. In other words, he couldn't get the bill that he wanted, and then he couldn't get that passed.
Right.
And now he's looking at having to watch his party employ the nuclear option in order to get his Supreme Court nominee seated. So I don't know. I think that the founders designed in many ways a really ingenious system, and we put a lot of attention on the president because it's one person who's on our TV screens or our phones all the time. But I'm not sure how much power is vested in that person. Now, when it comes to foreign policy, it's a different kettle of fish.
Well, it's enough that the EPA has been sort of hobbled I mean, what they've done with the Environmental Protection Agency standards, especially when it in regards to emissions, he's rolled back emission standards. I mean, if there's anything that we should be concerned about, it's the air that we breathe. And we were moving in a direction. We were clearly moving in a direction to get away from things like coal. And he's going the opposite way. Not only that, but what I've heard is that that's not even going to be effective, because most places have moved away from coal to the point where restarting coal production is it's not even going to recharge the economy in the way that would make it a viable option in the first place.
The issue of climate change is just, I'll say as a member of the media, an area where I feel, I'm just speaking for myself here, really one of our biggest failures. And I don't think history is going to judge us kindly. And again, I'll put the blame on myself. It's a hard story to get people just that interested in, and it's especially for television, because it's a lot of sort of graphs and science, and there's only so many pictures of polar bears you can show. And so I anguish about that, because I do think there isn't a debate. Climate change is real, almost certainly caused by humans. I don't think and for too long we fell for that in the media, where we presented it as a debate when it wasn't. Now I think we're past that, but I still don't think we're covering it enough and as robustly as we should.
Well, climate change, I think, is it's a sort of almost abstract to people. It's very difficult for them to wrap their head around, especially when they look at the ice core samples. And there's plenty of stuff online where you could sort of convince yourself that there's always been this rise and fall of the temperature on the Earth. And in many ways that is true. But pollution is another thing.
I think actually I just walked in, so I might have missed what you said there, but I think that's a crucial shift of emphasis, because there is no argument about air pollution, its consequences, its undesirability. I mean, like, you don't want particulates in your lungs that you don't need to have there. And the idea that so you could completely justify a green economy on that basis alone. Maybe just imagine if we had no pollution coming from the exhausts of all the cars out there, and there was no coal-fired power plants. We just had solar and wind and safe nuclear technology powering the grid. It would be fantastic from just a pure. I mean, forget about the health. Obviously, cancer is lung cancer and cardiovascular disease is a huge issue there. But just aesthetically, it's so desirable. I mean, there's no argument against it, and that's. Right. I feel like people don't make that connection very much.
Because climate change is slow moving, and it could be way out in the future before.
But pollution isn't.
I know. But pollution is much less controversial than climate change.
Well, that's why this coal thing is so disturbing.
Yeah.
Reigniting this production of coal.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's ridiculous.
I guess I have questions about whether it's even going to happen. In other words, you can roll it back, but the coal industry, there are many factors to their decision making.
Right.
About, for example, if they go and do the mining, is what they mine going to actually even be consumed? So, and I think that even though they're making some pretty radical noises at the EPA, I'm not sure how far Pruitt can take some of this stuff, given the existing body of case law that has formed around Obama's decisions. Right. So it gets pretty more complicated the closer you look at it, from what I can tell. And I won't claim to have studied it too closely, but it seems to get more complicated the more you look at it. The headlines may be scarier, I guess, is my point.
Well, what's pretty clear, though, is emission standards. Rolling back emission standards sends a very clear message that it's okay to pollute the air. I mean, we were moving in a direction of going towards electric cars, going towards cars that pollute the environment less. I mean, even cars that use gas. For Porsche has a 911 Turbo, and the standards of emissions are so strong. What they've developed is a car that when you drive it through LA, the exhaust that comes out is cleaner than the air it sucks in. Imagine that. So you're driving through.
It's an air filter.
Yeah, literally is.
It's a bad air filter.
But it can be done.
Very expensive air filter.
I mean, it can be done. I mean, that's I mean, and we can move further and further away. I mean, obviously, the problem with that is it's taking in polluted air. You know, that's the issue in the first place. I mean, it's not clean. You don't want to breathe the exhaust of a Porsche. But what they've done is managed to make something so efficient that it actually does emit clean air coming out of it, or cleaner than the polluted air that it's sucking in. Now, if these Environmental Protection Agency standards keep getting rolled back, I mean, we're going to go back to, I mean, I don't know how far they're rolling it back, but what you said is so clear. There's nothing good about polluting the air. I mean, it's what we need to breathe. And there's options. The idea that business should take precedent over the actual environment that we need to sustain ourselves.
Well, let's not forget there are real human beings in coal country who, you know, have generations of have spent generations working in this industry, take great pride in it, and we've got to think about what we do.
But it's only the numbers here are surprising and also a little reported. It's only 75,000 coal jobs we're talking about in the country, and there's something like 500,000 clean tech jobs just in California alone. I mean, the numbers are completely out of whack.
No, I think the clean tech industry offers an enormous amount of promise, but 75,000 families is not nothing.
And when we're talking about,
but then give them money, right?
Right, they don't want a handout.
Oh, you know,
they want to work.
This goes to the question of meaning, and
Yes,
you know,
yes,
like what are we going to do? Because
absolutely.
the precipice we're getting to is virtually everyone is going to be in the position of these coal miners when we're talking about, and that's a good thing. That's the thing. I mean, that's the, you know, why can't they figure out that they just want to learn new languages and spend more time with their kids and play frisbee and have fun? We need a new ethic and politics that decouples a person's claim on existence from doing profitable work that someone will pay you for, because a lot of that work is going away.
I mean, we could view it as an opportunity, and it is actually something. It does dovetail with this hobby horse that you and I have been on for a while about the power of meditation and what it can do to a human mind and the way you view the world and your role in it, for sure.
Well, what are your thoughts on universal basic income? Because bring it back to that with this rise of the machines. If we do have things automated, I mean, some ridiculous number of people make their living driving cars and driving trucks. Now, when those jobs are gone, I think it's millions of people, right?
Yeah,
Isn't it?
no, and I think it is in the States. It's the most common job for white men. I think it's something like 9 million white men are driving trucks and cars. I mean,
the problem with that is most people are like, fuck white men.
Yeah. Well,
tired of white men.
But
We're the patriarchy.
This is you know, Trump's base.
Yeah.
No, it's these. I think universal basic income. There are reasons to worry that it's not a perfect solution, because you want to incentivize the things you want to incentivize. You need to just understand the consequences of any system you would put in place. But there's just no question that viewed as an opportunity, this is the greatest opportunity in human history. We're talking about canceling the need for dangerous, boring, repetitive work and freeing up humanity to do interesting, creative, fun things. Now, how could that be bad? Well, give us a little time and we'll show you how we can make it bad. But it'll be bad if it leads to just, you know, extraordinary wealth inequality that we don't have the political or ethical will to fix. And because if we have a culture of people who think, I don't want any handouts, and I certainly don't want my neighbor to get any handouts, and I don't want to pay any taxes so that he can be a lazy bum. If we have this, you know, hangover from Calvinism, you know, that makes it impossible to talk creatively and reasonably about what has changed, yeah, it could be a very painful bottleneck we have to pass through until we get to something that is much better or a hell of a lot worse, depending on where the technology goes. And I think at a certain point, the wealth inequality will be obviously unsustainable. I mean, you can't have multiple trillionaires walking around living in compounds with razor wire and just moving everywhere by private jet. and then, massive levels of unemployment in a society like ours. I mean, at a certain point, where the richest people will realize that enough is enough. We have to spread this wealth, because otherwise, people are just going to show up at our compounds with their AR-15s or their pitchforks, and the society will not sustain it. I mean, you can't. There has to be some level of wealth inequality that is unsustainable, that people will not tolerate, and you begin to look more and more like a banana republic until you become a banana republic. But now we're talking about the U.S. or the developed world, where all the wealth is. So redistribution is the end game. But that's a toxic concept for half of the country right now.
Right, the idea of the welfare state, the idea of perpetuating that and spreading it across the board.
Yeah, but these are so. Yeah, I mean, whatever the solution is for coal mining, we should not be hostage for the coal miners. We should not be hostage to the idea that they need jobs, so that whatever job they were doing and are still qualified to do, that job has to continue to exist no matter what the environmental consequences, no matter what the health consequences, no matter how it closes the door to good things that we want. We don't do that with anything. We didn't do that with the people who are making buggy whips or anything else.
Or slavery.
I mean, there's no. At a certain point, we move on and we make progress, and we don't let that progress get rolled back. And when you're talking about developing technology that produces energy that doesn't have any of these negative effects, whether it's global climate change or just pollution, of course we have to move in that direction. And the other thing that's crazy is that we're not talking honestly about how the dirty tech is subsidized. I mean, you have the oil people say, well, solar is all subsidized, right? This is, it's just this a government handout that's giving us the solar industry. Well, one, that's not even you have to produce an argument as to why that's a bad thing. This is something we should want the government to do. The government needs to incentivize new industries that the market can't incentivize now, if they are industries that are just intrinsically good and are going to lead to the betterment of humanity. But carbon is massively subsidized. We don't have. I mean, if we actually had the coal producers and the petroleum producers pay for the consequences of carbon and pollution, it would be much more expensive than it is, right? So it's already subsidized. We do. So we should. I mean, we need a carbon tax. Clearly, we need to. I mean, the tax code should incentivize what we want to incentivize.
Well, there's a ton of industries in this country that you could make that argument for. The corn industry is one.
Yeah.
I mean, subsidizing the corn industry, and when you find out that corn and corn syrup is responsible for just a huge epidemic of obesity in this country, the amount of corn syrup that's in foods.
If you as a polluter had to pay the consequences of your pollution all the way down the line, right? You had to compensate everyone who got emphysema or lung cancer because of what you were putting into the air. Your industry, it would be less profitable, right? And it might not be profitable at all. And we don't have. We haven't priced all of that in to any of these things. Whether you're talking about the chemical industry or
the cigarette industry. I mean, we're addicted to the use of these fossil fuels the same way we're addicted to. Some people are addicted to the use of cigarettes. I mean, the health consequences of those things they're almost parallel in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and amazingly, is you have the same. I mean, I think you turned me on to this documentary. What was it? Merchants of Doubt.
Yes.
I mean, like the same PhDs. You got like 10 guys who move from just toxic industry to toxic industry, defending whether it's big tobacco or the fire retardants.
I'm in that documentary.
Oh, you are.
Yeah,
okay.
You are. That's right.
I interviewed a guy named Fred Singer, who was one of these people, and he's a climate change denier, and there's just some it's been a while, but there were some key moments where I was like listing for him all the major scientific organizations that say that climate change is real and that humans are major contributors to it, and he basically just refused to accept it.
Well, those shows where you have the three heads, you and then the two experts, and they yell over each other,
Yes.
and then we'll be right back, and then you go to commercial.
Yeah.
Those fucking things don't solve anything.
Well-
there's those weird moments where people are yelling at each other, and you can't figure out who's right or who's wrong.
I'm not a big fan of that personally, and I think that especially it was a failure to do that with climate change because it created the doubt. It
Yeah.
created the doubt, and I think that was a very successful. It was a very successful strategy.
But that's in tension with what we just said about the New York Times, because if you take a position as a journalist, if you say, okay, actually one side of this conversation is full of shit, then you seem like you're not an honest broker of information.
I think it's different to take a position. I don't. It's not controversial for me to sit here and say if you smoke cigarettes, the science strongly suggests you have a higher odds of lung cancer. Same thing with climate change, but it became politicized. So I don't feel. You'll notice I've stepped out of some of the discussions that have been taking place because it's not my role as a journalist to come down on one side or another. But with climate change, I feel absolutely comfortable saying the vast majority of scientists believe this is real and a big problem. So I don't what you're talking about with the New York Times, and I'm not going to step out and take a view on it. But what I believe you're saying with the Times is that they were pro-Clinton and anti-Trump. That's different from having a position on climate change.
Well, it's not. Well, no, because to have a position on just take the lens as climate change. You have one candidate who's denying the reality of climate change, or who's just claiming that the climate change is a Chinese hoax.
Anti-Trump.
Well, no, because when Trump says climate change is a Chinese hoax, you have to call him.
Has he really said that?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
He said it's a Chinese hoax?
Yes.
He should go to China and see those people that are walking around with gas masks
Right.
on because they
Well,
can't breathe in
but-
Beijing.
Okay, but that's the pollution argument,
Right.
which I think
It's
is
true.
actually much stronger
Right.
because there's just you can't go to Beijing and say this is how we want the air to be, right? But I think something like 25% of the air pollution in California on some days is coming from China. I mean, there's some amazing. I could have that slightly wrong. Jamie could check that out. But
Please do.
There's some extraordinary amount of air pollution that we get from China.
That's insane. I did not know that.
Yeah.
It just makes its way across the ocean?
Yeah, oh yeah. There's no wall. We got to build that wall. But at a certain point, I mean, there's some level of dishonesty and misinformation that's so egregious that if you're a journalist committed to being an unbiased or a disinterested broker of information and a conversation, if you set up a conversation between the Sean Spicers of the world or the Kellyanne Conways who have their alternative facts, and someone who's honestly talking about whatever it is, climate change, it's very, you can't split that baby.
But I don't think you have to create mock unnecessary debates around climate change. What I do think is that with the Trump administration, that it is imperative for that journalists call out when things are said that aren't true. But that I don't think it's constructive for mainstream journalistic organizations to have an openly hostile anti-Trump attitude or pro somebody else attitude, because then that just leads to further polarization, which is exactly what we don't need.
But you call him out on all the times that he said things that are just absolutely not true. That feels like you're anti-Trump.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
There's no question. There's no question, and I think that's an issue we're dealing with. But I think this is a time of real soul searching in my industry, because I firmly believe there is a very powerful place in a functioning democracy for a press, for media that people generally view as fair.
Well, it really highlights the responsibility of getting accurate and unbiased information to people, because there's not a lot of sources of that left. I mean, when you look at Fox News, and sometimes you look at CNN, and sometimes you look at MSNBC, and you're like, boy, how much of this is editorialized? How much of this is opinion? you need unbiased facts, and you almost need it not delivered by people. You know, the problem is when people are delivering the news. Like when you talk to someone, you know, they're educated at an Ivy League university, and they speak a certain way, they act a certain way. You almost can assume that these intellectual people, these well-read people, are going to sort of lean towards one way or another.
I think that there is that issue. I would argue, and again, I know this is self-serving, but I still believe it, that the 3 broadcast networks have actually fared quite well in what is a incredibly difficult environment right now.
So you don't count Fox as a broadcast network?
Fox News is a cable network,
right?
But Fox,
but they don't have like
Fox Broadcast does not have a news division the way ABC, CBS, and NBC do.
So just broadcast, meaning traditional, old school signal in the air that nobody uses anymore.
Nobody uses them, but we
weird.
Refer to them within the industry as the 3 broadcast.
Isn't
networks.
that bizarre though?
It is. Well, some people, they put up their rabbit ears and get
Who
the signal.
Fuck does that?
Cord cutters, extreme cord cutters.
JB, you got
it's
one?
$20. I get like 30 channels, and it's way better, and it works. There's no lagging. There's no buffering. I mean,
so you do that, and then you get like Netflix for TV
I
shows.
get like Hulu,
and
I have Sling. But when I want to watch a basketball game, like the NCAA basketball tournament last night, I had to watch it on that.
Through the air.
It worked
Old
really good.
school.
I'm
Wow.
just saying it worked.
Wow,
Yeah.
interesting.
So,
Like
what are the
having
numbers?
A vinyl collection too.
What's the viewership
benefits.
on an evening news broadcast now? Is it like 5 million?
No, it's around 8 or 9.
8 or 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
Is
still
it
a
up?
really big number.
Is it up?
I don't follow all of the ticks when it comes to the numbers, so I can't answer that accurately. But people have been predicting the demise of network news for decades now. I've been at ABC News for 17 years. I've been reading obituaries all throughout that time. 8 million a night on each of the networks is still that is a gigantic number, especially in an age of of micro information, of niche broadcasting and the internet. It's all that. Here are the numbers right there.
NBC. So ABC's in the lead.
ABC is the lead in total viewers. And ABC and NBC, and this is just 1 week, March 27th, right around 8, and then CBS is 6.5 million. So that's a lot of people.
It skews super old, though. 'Cause
It
look
does.
Look at that demographic.
It absolutely it skews very, very old.
Well, it's all people. It's the majority is people over 54 or under 25, but I don't think that's the case.
There's like
we're
4
looking
guys
at,
under
We're looking
25.
at 25 to 54. ABC has 1.6 million, as opposed to 8 million total viewers. NBC 7.8 million total viewers, 1.7 million 25 to 54, and then CBS 6.4 million total, 1.3 million 25 to 54. It's funny, like after 54, fuck you, but before 25, fuck you. That's what they concentrate on. This one.
It is what advertisers want.
It's funny. People with vitality.
Well, you can tell
numbers that are
based on the
interesting-
ads. I mean, the ads you run,
Pharmaceutical ads,
it's
yeah.
like for catheters and
It gets
anti-inflammatories.
It gets a
and
little
Viagra.
different on the morning because in the morning shows where we're also it's closer to 4 or 5 million for ABC and NBC and a little less for CBS. The percentage of that audience that falls within the demo, as we call it, 25 to 54, is higher, and so the ads are kind of different. But I guess my point is that you still have a really significant number of people, if you take the mornings and evenings on these broadcast networks, that are getting their news from these places, which just gets back to the polarized media atmosphere you were talking about before. I think in this atmosphere, that having the networks be seen to a certain extent, to the extent possible, as above the fray, actually is important for democracy.
How many does Alex Jones get? What does Alex
He
Jones
claims, I think, 40 million a week, but they include like website hits in their big number, so it's a skewed number.
I've spent some time with him.
get? Me
Oh, yeah?
too.
Yeah, have you? Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I know him very well.
Yeah, okay.
I've had him on the
down to
podcast.
Austin. I went down to Austin and
Did you
spent a
interview
little
him?
time. Yeah.
For how long? How long were you there for?
Basically spent a day at hanging around his operation. This was, I would say, in 2009.
Oh,
Yeah, so it was a while ago.
Before it was the monolith that it is
Yeah,
now.
it was pretty big back then, but not what it is now.
In 1999, Alex Jones and I put on George Bush Sr. and Jr. masks, and we smoked pot out of a bong, and then danced around the not the White House, the Capitol building in Texas for a stand-up video that I did. Yeah, I've been friends with that guy since '99.
Well, yeah, I listened to your recent podcast with him, which was just
Interdimensional child molesters that are infiltrating our airwaves. Yeah, he went deep. We got him high and drunk, and he went.
It was amazing.
He went as deep as he's ever gone before.
Do you find that he is different when he's not being recorded?
Yeah, sort of. There he is. There he is, screaming and yelling. That's me and him.
I broke the mask.
That's him singing, by the way.
Texas, capital wars, spires of the Dark Lord, their vision to make us.
He made up all
Friends
this.
is his band.
Moloch the Owl God. No,
Right.
that's the. He made up these lyrics. This song is all him. I believe he might have ad-libbed it too. Give me some volume on this.
It's the belly of the beast.
That was the name of my DVD, Belly of the Beast.
Live from Austin, Texas. Strap yourselves in. It's the belly of the beast. Belly of the beast.
That's Alex. He's so crazy. I mean, he's definitely different when he's not being recorded, but he is that guy, you know?
So he it's sincere. He believes all the stuff.
He believes a lot of it.
I mean,
yeah. Whether he's correct or not, that's a different argument. Whether or not he believes it.
I was struck. I spent a full day with him, and then we had dinner with him afterwards, and we were not recorded. And I was struck by the difference in demeanor off camera and not being recorded.
Yeah, there's definitely that. I mean,
I'm not
definitely
saying
he's
he
a
doesn't
showman.
believe it. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not in his
He's
mind.
a showman for
Yeah.
sure. What's really disturbing is when he gets stuff right. You know, like the World Trade Organization is a perfect example. He was one of the ones that highlighted the use of agent provocateurs. Now, what agency, who hires these people? But what they do is they take something like the WTO, which was a big embarrassment that people were protesting the WTO, and they hire people to turn this peaceful protest into a violent protest. So these people come in, they wear ski masks, they break windows, and they light things on fire, or do whatever they do that makes it violent. And then they have the cops come in and break it up because now it's no longer a peaceful protest. And so it got to the point where the people were trying to show up for work. They had WTO pins on that had a line through it. Well, they had created a no protest zone, and they were taking, this is all on footage on the news. They were telling people you have to take the pin off. You can't go through this area where you work with a WTO pin on your backpack or on your jacket. I mean, that's crazy. And he highlighted that and made and that use of agent provocateurs has been documented. This is a real thing, and it's a real tactic that, again, what agency, what faction of the military, what faction of the government hires these people to do that, I don't know. But it is a real thing, and I did not know about that until Alex highlighted it on one of his videos. It's been proven. It's been proven that it's real. And so that alone is disturbing. When you stop and think about all the different things that he's informed people of that turned out were real, like Operation Northwoods, when the Freedom of Information Act came out with the Operation Northwoods document where the Joint Chiefs of Staff had signed this, and this was like something that they were really trying to implement. They were going to arm Cuban friendlies and have them attack Guantanamo Bay. They were going to blow up a drone jetliner. They're going to blame it on the Cubans, and they were trying to use this as impetus to get us to go to war with Cuba.
Yeah, but how do you feel about the things that he's talking about that are demonstrably
but let's talk
false?
about that first.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that are true. That's what gets really squirrely.
Yeah.
What gets really squirrely is like when you find out that there have been things like the Gulf of Tonkin incident, like there's many things that have happened where there have been false flags, where the government has conspired to lie to the American people, and people have died because of it.
I think. Well, I don't know a lot about Gulf of Tonkin, but although I know more about it than those other examples, I mean there are definitely there are cases where it's an additional interpretation to say that the government lied. I mean, so to take even something that's closer to hand, like weapons of mass destruction as a pretext to go into Iraq, right? Now, it's one thing to say that people knowingly lied about, that Bush and Cheney knowingly lied to the American people about that, or they were misled by people who were knowingly lying,
right?
Or just everyone got it wrong. Like it was totally plausible to everyone who was informed that he had a WMD program, and they misinterpreted whatever evidence they thought they had, and they were just wrong. Now, so that's a spectrum. I'm not claiming to know which one of those is true. I think it's probably that the last is much closer to the truth, and that explains many of these instances. But what's so corrosive about pure examples of lying is that, and we may have one case now that's just emerging in the news. I don't know if maybe the story has been clarified while we've been talking, but it now seems that Susan Rice came out at one point. She said she knew nothing about the unmasking of Trump associates in this recent surveillance case, and now it seems that it is claimed that she actually asked to have certain names unmasked, and so this is being seized upon again just in the last few hours as an example of a lie, right, which seems very sinister. But as though it equalizes the two sides here, right? Let's say worst case scenario, Susan Rice lied about having some knowledge of this investigation. That doesn't. It says something bad about Susan Rice. It says she has to deal with the consequences of that lie, but it doesn't exonerate all of the lying that Trump has done about everything under the sun, right? So what's so destabilizing here is that the moment. And this is even true of honest errors. The moment that a news organization like yours or the New York Times commits an honest error, that gets pointed to from those who want to treat the mainstream news media as just fake news, as see, everything's the same. You're no better than somebody who's just manufacturing fake news on a laptop in his basement. So it's and the flip side of that is when Alex Jones gets something right, it seems to make him look like a dignified journalistic enterprise analogous to the New York Times or to ABC News, and neither of those things are true. I mean, there are small lies, and then there are huge lies. There are honest mistakes committed by totally reputable organizations that are really trying to get their facts straight, and then there are malicious propaganda outlets that are not at all trying to get their facts straight and are trying to engineer everyone's credulity and ignorance into something that is just purely a matter of tribal sentiment, and so we lose our ability to distinguish these different projects when we say, oh, look, fake news, both sides do it. Or here's a lie. Here's Susan Rice's one lie that she told in the last 10 years maybe and got caught for. And we have a president who lies every time he picks up his, approaches a mic or picks up his Twitter.
She had other problems because she had gone on, I believe, on the Sunday morning talk shows after Benghazi with some outdated talking points.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, Susan looked like she was itching to get caught. I mean, whether this is a case of she getting
Yeah. No, I think your point is very, very important, because I think that when you have, if you have one side that lies all the time, it's imperative that the other side don't lie at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, if you get caught lying, they're going to say, look, everybody does
That's
it.
why it's a tense time for people in my line of work, because we're so much scrutiny, and when we get it wrong, we really, we take a lot of heat. But when we get it wrong, I think we're pretty quick to say, we got it wrong, here's the truth.
Do you know that Donald Trump Jr. said that Cernovich should get a Pulitzer for exposing
really?
Susan Rice?
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's why this drives me a little crazy, because it's not Cernovich. It's the fact that this is bled into the real world.
Why'd you lead him down the Cernovich thing? You just brought him right back in.
It's huge.
We're yarn in front of the kitten.
We're only now discovering the consequences of this. Let's come back in 5 years and see if we're talking about anything that makes any sense.
Well, it's all very blurry. It really is very blurry, because we've never had a situation like this where we have a president that people just don't trust to be honest. I mean, if someone lied about anything in the past, I mean, if Donald Trump got caught having his dick sucked in the White House tomorrow on film, he'd be like, look, I made a mistake. I mean, it would be nothing.
Yeah.
It would be nothing.
Photoshop.
Fake news.
But don't you think, just slot, to use Joseph Goldstein's phrase before about slotting into geological time and just looking at the broader scope of history, we've had really, we've had periods of time where we had media, the muckrakers, where the media outlets didn't even pretend at times to not have an agenda.
What times were those?
In the early parts of our republic, where we had, was it Teddy Roosevelt called the journalists muckrakers, where he was saying that their job was to rake muck, to be working in filth. And the media and American politics have been filled with instances. American media and American politics have been filled with instances over our short history of untruths and agendas. And then we have times of relative stability, and then sometimes we slide back into more tumultuous times. I think, maybe the Pollyanna here, but I think that the Republic will survive, and that we will, that it doesn't inexorably lead to a time where truth doesn't matter.
Well, it seems to open up the door for a viable alternative. Seems to open up the door for someone who comes along who is in many ways bulletproof. Well, that is a very ethical person.
It's opened a door. I mean, now anyone
You're
can be
talking
president.
about somebody to run for office.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just don't think anybody's bulletproof. Humans. I mean, with the exception of Joe Rogan,
but definitely not bulletproof.
You don't have to be bulletproof. I mean, this guy's got nothing but bullet holes in him, and he's president.
No, but what Joe was saying is it opens the door to somebody who's unimpeachable.
A strong, viable alternative, like someone who is ethical.
I think the door is open to anyone. I mean, who couldn't be president at this point? I mean,
but there's no one that steps forward right now. I mean, do you think they're waiting? I mean, like, who the fuck? First of all,
we'll see.
You couldn't be president. There's never been an open atheist.
They would attack your Twitter page. First of all,
yeah. Good luck.
They would hire.
No, I mean, I think if you're going to use a conventional political calculus, well, then, being an atheist, having a history of psychedelic drug use, having edgy positions that alienate massive constituencies. I mean, all of that's a deal breaker. But you would never have predicted that someone this scandalous and inept and dishonest, and provably so he literally can't get through an hour of the day without something that would have been a scandal in some previous age of the earth coming out of his mouth. I think there's no predicting who could be president in the future. I mean, you need wealth, and you need charisma on some level. You need to be able to get a tribe behind you. But I don't think you need any of what people thought you needed even a year ago.
Well, what he's done by circumventing the whole system and by being independently wealthy is really kind of...
But even that was a sham. I mean, what's amazing is that I don't know how much money he actually put into his campaign, but it's just not nearly what you would have... he really only had to pretend to be that wealthy. And it was incredible what happened.
The flip side of it is what he achieved with very little campaign funds and his wits. It's incredible. It's... Like him or not, you have to give him credit for an unbelievable victory that very few people saw coming.
It's a popularity contest. Isn't that part of the problem? You made a popular person president of a popularity contest. I mean, that's what it is. He won.
He was running against somebody who wasn't popular.
Right.
So, I mean, let's put it in context. Yeah. And we was coming after 8 years of a Democratic president who was controversial in many ways. And it's always harder for somebody of the same party to run. So there are a lot of dynamics, larger impersonal dynamics that were working in his favor.
Yeah, it's just...
But just to get back to the argument about, like, are we in apocalyptic times or whatever, I guess, I don't know anything. But my instinct is, just as a country, we've seen times of much worse division. We had a civil war.
But it's telling that you have to go back there for a compelling example. I mean, I think this.
Well, what about in the 60s?
Yeah,
we had people in the streets. We had the Weather Underground. We had, it was pretty tumultuous. We had MLK and RFK assassinated.
Yeah,
it was pretty divided time.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm worried about now is, I think he's truly unique, and I think the the way we're becoming unmoored from kind of the ordinary truth testing in politics, I think is unique. I mean, the fact that we have a president who seems, because there's a whole feedback mechanism. I mean, Trump seems to get some of his information from InfoWars and from places like InfoWars.
Oh, he goes on it all the time.
But you don't think he pays a price for his
No.
I mean, his popularity rating is not high.
Oh yeah, well, he's paying some price, but the question is it going to be enough? And what happens with the next terrorist attack? Right? I mean, so the real fear is that if we have a Reichstag fire kind of moment, right, engineered by him or not. I mean, I'm not so paranoid as to think he's going to do it, but I just think it's inevitable something is going to happen. I mean, we've had 80 days, 100 days, whatever it's been of his presidency, where basically nothing has happened and it's been pure chaos, right? And the work of government's not getting done. The government's barely even staffed, and this has been a period of where nothing really has happened. But imagine a 9/11 size event, or something really goes off the rails with North Korea or China or Russia. It will be so. I mean, the pressure. One, the pressure to normalize him as the commander in chief will be much greater than it is now, and already everyone's feeling that pressure. But two, the ability to clamp down on civil liberties and just use the power of the presidency in a way that it would be very difficult for our society to recover from. I think it's just. I mean, I think it's a scary moment, and the people who are drawing analogies between him and the 30s in Germany. I mean, I think those analogies are misleading in ways, but again, you just don't know how strange things could get if with a big negative stimulus to the system. What I think we know is that we have someone in charge who is a malignantly selfish con man. Right. I think that is an objective fact. That's not a partisan thing to say. He is. I mean, that's as obvious about him as his hair. And to have that much power in the hands of somebody whose ethical compass is that unreliable or reliably bad, in my view. And again, I wouldn't say this of Pence, who scares me for other reasons. I mean, he's a theocrat. I wouldn't say this of most Republicans who I might disagree with. But there's just something to put that much power in the hands of somebody who is so disconnected from facts and reasonable concern for the well-being of the rest of humanity and the future. I mean, it's an incredible moment, and I don't think we've ever had a president who you could look at and say that about so clearly. I mean, not even Nixon. I mean, Nixon, it was pathological in other ways, but Nixon was giving us the Clean Air Act, right? I mean, Nixon had some point of contact with terrestrial reality, which wasn't just about figuring out how to burnish his imaginary grandeur, So, yeah, I mean, I think we're one huge news story away from finding out how bad a president he could be, and I think that's, I think he could surprise even the people who are very pessimistic.
He could also rise to the occasion.
Yeah. I mean,
look at you being objective. That's the newsman in him. Yeah. See that?
Well, no. I mean,
I also like to,
I would be the first to give him or the system credit for that. I mean, it's not that. If he starts doing something good, like let's say a massive infrastructure project, right, that includes building out good things, not coal jobs, but if
fixing bridges,
clean infrastructure, right? If he starts doing that. That'd be fantastic, right? And it's possible he could start doing that for his own. His motives wouldn't even matter ultimately, as long as he was doing the right things. But his motives are so reliably self-involved that I mean, what we need is a system. Someone needs to be able to play him, I mean, this kind of narcissistic glockenspiel well enough to get him to do the things that would be good for the world. But I just don't see. There's just too much chaos in the system for that to be a reliable.
Well, like
game.
you, they try to keep him away from social media.
Yeah. Well, that's working out.
I mean, that's a big thing, don't they? They try to pull him away from it.
Yeah, but that's been impossible.
Still
no one can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's remember that crazy press conference that he had, like just a few weeks into being president?
That was unbelievable.
I got text messages from friends that are Republicans, and they were like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, but it's an interesting sort of Rorschach test, because there are millions of Americans who watched that press conference and found it delightful. They thought that he was pounding on the liberal media.
Yeah, when you read a transcript, of what actually comes out of his mouth, it is amazing. I mean, the poverty of the passages in terms of information, and I mean, it's just the fact that we have a president who speaks like this is. I could never have foreseen that in our lifetime this was going to happen. It's unimaginable to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people there are just indisputably millions of Americans who find it
Ivy
refreshing.
League concern.
Did you see Bill Maher's thing about Anthony Weiner? That he thinks that Anthony Weiner should run against Trump.
I did see that. Yeah.
We need our own crazy man.
Yeah.
Because Anthony Weiner, besides his obvious addictions to sexting with people, was a very powerful politician and a very good speaker, and he had a lot of very good quality. He was going after bankers, the same as Elliot Spitzer, right?
Yeah.
Elliot Spitzer did a lot of good things. He was going after the bankers. He was going after corruption, and
yeah. Well, I mean, that's an example. I mean, there's a flag planted that shows us how far we have gone from the normal. I mean, Elliot Spitzer destroyed himself with one instance of hypocrisy. Right? One.
Well, it was pretty bad. He was
Trump level bad. I mean, there's like.
I don't know. I mean, we don't have.
Well, the hypocrisy was that
breaking the law in this way. I mean, he was with a prostitute.
Well, that's a stupid law.
Okay,
the real problem was that he was going. He was going after.
He was going after
prostitutes.
Johns and
He was
prostitutes.
going after Johns.
I know.
That was the real problem.
That's the hypocrisy.
The hypocrisy wasn't that he did something illegal where he paid someone for sex. That law seems to me to be so archaic and so ridiculous. You could pay someone to massage you. You can't pay someone to touch your genitals. It seems ridiculous.
Right. But I guess the other piece you have to put in play there is that there's some percentage of people working in the sex trade who are not doing it voluntarily, who are coerced to one or another degree.
Yes.
And that's a horror show. And
isn't part of the problem with that is that it's illegal. I mean, that's the big argument is that.
Yeah, well, yes, that there is that argument, and no, I agree with you that consenting adults should be able to do what they want to do, but the crucial variable there is consent,
right?
And kids can't consent.
Agreed.
And,
yes.
Agreed.
Yes.
I just think that someone is going to have to be dynamic. They're going to have to engage people in a way that, I mean, they're going to have to deal with his attacks. It's
or maybe what people will be thirsting for after 4 years is actually Bland.
Yeah, right. Maybe, right. Yeah.
I would do with Bland right now. That would be fantastic. Bland and actually super religious would be. I mean, my
Ted
enthusiasm.
Cruz? You'd be happy for Ted Cruz?
Ted Cruz is not Bland.
No.
But my enthusiasm for impeachment suggests that I'm happy with Pence, right? So, if I could find the impeachment button, I would not hesitate to press it. And Pence, given his religious commitments, a few short years ago would have been among my worst nightmares. I mean, I would be talking about the rise of the Christian right and the danger of theocracy, and I mean psychologically he seems like a normal, predictable, solid American compared to what we have. It's just.
Isn't the other question like Trump's age? He's a 70-year-old man. I mean, people don't really live that much past 70. Especially people that are overweight. and people that don't
seems,
exercise.
He seems all too healthy to me.
He seems pretty healthy.
I mean, that campaign.
He does.
Was,
Yeah.
I can't believe. I mean, that's
He's a man of energy.
In his credit, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an amazing
Yeah.
thing to be able to do.
How do you think he
It's
does
the most
that?
punishing thing in the world. I can't even imagine what his
He
schedule
looked
was
like he
like.
was having a good time. Seriously.
It did. It did.
And in that press conference we were talking about, that 77-minute press conference, he looked like he was having a blast.
Yeah.
He gets really energized.
Yeah, I mean it's got to be the most punishing beatdown ever if you're not designed for it. I mean, I can't imagine how tiring
I could never do
that
it.
campaign.
I mean,
was.
you get exhausted for 30 minutes of looking at your at mentions.
Exactly.
So
It's no, you have to be wired differently. But he clearly is he's wired that way, and it's worked for him. But you need someone who's willing to submit to the punishment of running, and that's a rare person, or it's not. And the problem is that kind of selects for things that you don't actually want in a president, or at least I wouldn't think you would want. I mean, it selects for a kind of narcissism and a sense that it really has to be you, right? It doesn't select for the. In a normal intellectual space, you're constantly aware of the ways in which you are not the best guy or gal to be doing the thing, right? Like you want to defer to experts, and Trump is only I can fix it, right? And that worked, and so you need there's something of that creeps into the headspace of most politicians, it seems, and so scientific humility and just a kind of a sense of the limits of any one person's expertise is not necessarily the right piece of software to have running when it comes time to run for president.
Now, I want to switch gears a little bit. It's not totally related, but it is in some ways. Headspace, talking about mindsets and talking about, we've brought this up, but really haven't delved into it much at all, about meditation and about how much it's affected you and how it got you back on track. And I know that you're a big proponent of it, and I am as well, although I think I'd probably do it differently than you guys do. But
I'd love to hear how you do it.
I use an isolation tank.
Oh, really? Like a
Yeah.
sensory deprivation technique?
Yeah. I do a lot of yoga. Those are two big ones for me. I think those alone have straightened out my brain in a great way. Yoga in particular. Yoga, because it's not... Yoga forces you to do it. Like if you're either doing it or you're not doing it. There's no room for distraction. You're essentially forced to deal with what these poses require of you. And I think that in doing so and having this singular focus of trying to maintain your balance and stretch and extend and do all these different things while you're doing, then concentrating almost entirely on your breath, which is a big factor in yoga. It has remarkable brain scrubbing attributes.
Yeah.
I would say, and I don't know much. Before I say this, let me just ask: what are you doing in the isolation tank? Like, what are you doing in your mind?
A lot. Well, I use it for a bunch of different ways. I don't use it as much as I should, honestly. But I concentrate on. Sometimes I go in there with an idea. Like I'll concentrate on material, that I'm working on, or maybe jujitsu techniques that I'm having problems with, or some other things that I'm dealing with. Any sort of issues that I have. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I just go in there and chill out and relax and breathe and concentrate. There's a lot of physical things that happen inside the tank. There's the amount of magnesium that's in the water because it's Epsom salts. It's really good for you physically. It's very good for the muscles. It loosens you up and relaxes you, and that eliminates a lot of stress. And that physical elimination of stress allows the brain to function with just less pressure. And allows you to relax more, puts things in perspective better. And it gives you this environment that's not available anywhere else on the planet, this weightless, floating, disconnected from your body environment where you don't hear anything, you don't see anything, you don't feel anything, you feel like you're weightless. You have this sensation of flying because you're totally weightless in the dark. You open your eyes, you don't see anything. You close your eyes, it's exactly the same. The water's the same temperature as your skin, so you don't feel the water, and you're floating.
I'll say this, I'm not sure how this is going to go down. I actually don't have any questions about the benefits of being in an isolation tank, even though I don't know too much about it. And I also am a I think yoga is great, although I don't do much of it myself. I think, though, that there may actually be a difference between those two activities and meditation. Because there's this is a highfalutin term, metacognition, sort of knowing what you know or knowing that you're thinking. That happens in the kind of mindfulness meditation of which Sam and I are proponents, that I think is a different thing, where you're seeing, and I'll just try to put this in English, when you're meditating the way we do, you're seeing how crazy you are. You're seeing you're fucking nuts. And that actually has a real value. A systematic collision with the asshole in your head has a real value, because when the asshole offers you up a shitty suggestion in the rest of your life, which is basically its job, like, oh yeah, you should eat the 17th cookie or say the thing that's going to ruin the next 48 hours of your marriage or whatever, you're better able to resist it.
So what do you do?
So, I mean, the basic steps of mindfulness meditation are to sit. Most people close their eyes. You bring your full attention to the feeling of your breath. You're not thinking about your breath. You're just feeling the raw data of the physical sensations. And then the third step is the biggie, which is, as soon as you try to do this, your mind's going to go bonkers. You're going to start thinking about, what's for lunch, do I need a haircut, where do gerbils run wild, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You're just going to notice, my mind's going crazy right now. But that noticing is the key moment, is in fact the victory. It's interesting because this is when most people think they've failed, I can't meditate because I can't clear my mind. This is the biggest misconception about meditation. You do not need to clear your mind. That's impossible unless you're enlightened or dead. The whole goal is just to notice when you become distracted and start again. You return your attention to your breath, and you just do that a million times. And every time you catch yourself wandering and go back to your breath, it's a bicep curl for your brain. It changes your brain. And that over time creates the kind of metacognition I was discussing before, where you see that you're a Homo sapiens sapien. In other words, that's how we're classified as a species. We're the one who thinks and knows he or she thinks. And that knowing that you have this voice in your head, as Sam likes to joke, he feels like when he thinks about the voice in his head, he feels like he's been hijacked by the most boring person alive. Just says the same shit over and over. A joke that I steal from him all the time. Yeah. That is enormously powerful, because then you are not held hostage by this voice.
A similar thing happens in the tank. I do a form of meditation in the tank sometimes when I go in there without an idea, like if I'm not working on material or anything else, where I just concentrating on my breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth, and I just literally concentrate on the breath, and the same thing happens.
That's meditation.
Well, yeah.
That's meditation.
Yeah.
It's not similar. It's the exact same thing.
The difference is in the tank, after a while, after about 20 minutes or so, that breaks loose to psychedelic states.
Wow.
Have you ever combined the tank with psychedelics?
Yes.
Altered state stuff?
Yeah.
It's
trippy.
What LSD or mushrooms?
Mushrooms. But the big one is edible pot. Edible pot seems to be as strong as anything in there.
Huh.
Like I eat enough pot where I'm convinced I'm going to die, and then I climb in there. And
Right.
Every time I do it, I go, don't do that again. So, because I just get out so terrified.
What's your motivation when you're eating the pot and climbing into the tank?
So let's see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah, just be scared. Be terrified.
Really?
Because nothing ever happens. You never die. But god damn, you're just convinced that the universe is imploding around you, and that
it usually has the character of fear being a major part of it.
So it's also not embracing the fear, not letting the fear run rampant, and just sort of relaxing and giving in to the vulnerability, the finite nature of your existence, and just breathing and concentrating and letting the dance take place, because there's some sort of a weird one of the things that there's a big misconception about when it comes to edible pot is that edible pot is like smoking pot. It's an entirely different process physiologically. Your liver,
the time course is very different too. I mean, you can stay stoned for 3 days.
You could fuck up and eat too many brownies and you'll be gone for a long time.
That sounds miserable.
It is, but it's not, because you get something out of it when it's over. The process is excruciating, but when you come out of it, you just feel so happy. It's over.
It's like the joke about the dude who's banging his head up against the wall, and somebody says, "Why are you doing that?" He says, "Because it feels so good when I stop."
In a way, but there's no physical damage. Banging your head up against the wall, you're going to hurt yourself.
This is true. Yeah, I don't know. I think there seems like there might be easier ways to get to the same wisdom, but I could be wrong.
Maybe. But I think there's also creativity that gets inspired by the edible pot. Something called 11-hydroxy metabolite that your body produces. It's so different than most people when they eat pot. They think they've been dosed. Like anybody who's smoked pot before, and then you give them a brownie, they think, oh my God, there was something in that. And they're convinced because reality itself just seems like it just dissolves. And especially inside the tank. There's something about the tank environment that produces, in the absence of any external stimuli, your brain becomes sort of supercharged. Because what you're trying to do when you're just sitting down and concentrating and relaxing is you're trying to focus on your thoughts, but you're still aware of your body. You're still aware of your elbows touching this desk, your butt touching the chair. There's all these different factors that are there's stimuli that's coming into your senses. Whereas in the tank, there's none of that, virtually. It's almost completely eliminated. There's some, but you can phase that stuff out. Like you could still feel the water a little bit if you think about it. You could still... sometimes you bump into the wall and you have to like center yourself and you have to like relax again and make sure you're not moving so that you don't touch things, which can kind of dissolve the experience.
There are experiences in meditation where you have that same experience where you lose your sense of the body, but that usually comes with more concentration.
Yeah.
You have to be very concentrated on it.
I feel like you would have that experience, and it would be even more intense if you did the exact same thing that you do outside the tank in the tank. I don't think you need any psychedelics in the tank.
No.
It's one thing that I tell people when they ask me, should I get high before I do it? I'm like, no, just do it. Just do it. If you decide after a while, if you've done it 3 or 4 times, you're like, I wonder what it's like if I just take a little bit of a hit of pot and see where it takes me. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not going to hurt you. You know, if you're a type of person who enjoys marijuana or whatever. But the tank alone by itself, just the absence of sensory input, your brain goes to a very, very different place. And as long as you can relax, as long as you don't think too much about the fact that you're in the tank, just concentrate entirely on your thoughts, entirely on your breath. And again, let all those crazy, like where do hamsters live, like all that shit. Let all that stuff run wild through your mouth. But I feel like in the tank, at least, that gets to a certain spot and then it stops existing. And then the psychedelic state takes over.
Yeah, well, it depends on what the goal is. I think there can be many different goals of meditation or quasi-spiritual practice, and they're not... They're distinct. So, I mean, the center of the bullseye for me is not suffering unnecessarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that mindfulness gives you is, I mean, so it's compatible with every experience you can have. I mean, there's nothing in your experience that isn't an appropriate object of meditation. Most people start with the breath because it's just a very convenient thing to start with. But once you know how to do this particular practice, your goal is to just be clearly aware of whatever your experience is in each moment. So emotions arise, thoughts arise, sounds come in. Your attention is wide open to whatever your experience is. So it's not like... So nothing in principle is a distraction. I mean, you could be meditating right next to a construction site, and the sound of the hammers is just as good an object of meditation as the breath or anything else. So there's nothing. Everything is included, but the superpower you're after, which you actually can acquire through this practice, is to realize that virtually all of your psychological suffering, and actually, arguably, virtually all of your physical suffering, I mean, the difference between physical pain and suffering, which, I mean, those two are not quite the same thing, is a matter of being lost in thought. It's a matter of thinking without knowing that you're thinking. And what mindfulness does, and really any technique of meditation ultimately should do, is teach you to break the spell of being lost in thought and to notice a thought as a thought. I mean, the huge difference is, until you learn how to meditate or do something like meditation, you're just helplessly thinking every moment of your life. You're having a conversation with yourself. You're having content, whether it's imagistic or linguistic, pour forth into consciousness every moment, and so incessantly that you don't even notice it. It's just white noise. And not only does it completely color your experience moment to moment. So like if they're angry thoughts, you're angry. If they're depressed thoughts, you're depressed. If they're sad, you're sad. So you become your thoughts, but you also feel identified. You feel that you are the thinker of your thoughts. You feel like a self, and it's completely structured by this flow of mentation every moment, and it produces everything you do. It produces all of your intentions and your goals and your actions. And he said this about me, and now I'm going to say this. I mean, so it's like it's everything coming out of you is born of this same process. And meditation is a way of recognizing that consciousness, I mean, what you are subjectively, is this prior condition of just awareness in which everything is showing up: sounds, sensations, and thoughts. And thoughts can become just other objects of consciousness. And so, I mean, to take even a very basic example of the difference between pain and suffering, you can feel very strong physical pain, I mean, unpleasant pain, and just be aware of it. In that, like, the sense that it's unbearable is virtually always untrue, because in that moment you've already borne it, right? I mean, the feeling that something's unbearable is really the fear of having to experience it in the next moment in the future, right? Because you're always like, if someone drives a nail into your knee, right? You might, well, that sounds like it's unbearable, but every moment you're feeling it, you're bearing it. Right, it's like it's what you're thinking about is the last moment and the next moment, and you're thinking about how much, when am I going to get some relief, and what's the cure, and how badly is my knee injured, and it's like you're worried about the future continuously, and you're not noticing the automaticity of thought that is amplifying the negativity of the experience in that moment. And we all know that you can have super intense sensation, which is either pleasant or unpleasant depending on the conceptual frame you've put around it. So, for instance, if you had this massive sense of soreness in your shoulder, that you would experience it very differently if it was the result of you deadlifting more than you ever had in your life and you were proud of it, right? B, probably cancer, and you're waiting for your the biopsy results, and you're worried about this is the thing that's going to kill you, or you're getting rolfed, like some deep tissue massage, and it hurts like hell, but you actually totally understand the source of the pain, and it's going to be gone the moment the guy pulls his elbow back, right? So it could be the exact same sensation in each one of those, but the conceptual frame you have around it totally dictates the level of psychological suffering, it can dictate the total absence of psychological suffering.
Now, we were talking before the podcast started about your apps, and we were talking about the amount of different meditation exercises on the apps. Like, what kind of different meditation exercises are there if you're talking about just concentrating on mindfulness and breathing?
As it turns out, you can iterate off of that basic exercise in infinity, essentially, because you talk about not only. Well, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but basically the basic instructions are that we listed before. You're feeling your breath coming in, and then when you get lost, you start again. But then you can add onto that. So one big thing to add on is something called mental noting. So you're breathing in and out, and you're feeling your breath, and then you get distracted by a huge wave of anger. Generally speaking, when we get hit by a wave of anger, we just inhabit the anger. We become angry. There's no buffer between the stimulus and our response to it. But there's this little technique you can do of just making a little mental note of, oh, that's anger. And that kind of objectifies the thing. It's a little bit like pressing the picture-in-picture button on your remote control, where the story that's taken up the whole frame can be seen with some perspective. So that's just one example of the little techniques that you can add on to the basic exercise, and you can go for a long time. So as we were discussing, Sam's about to start his meditation app, which is going to be called what, Sam? Waking Up?
Waking Up, yeah.
And I have mine, which is called 10% Happier. Sam is going to be doing all the teaching on his app, and on my app, since I'm not a teacher, we have experts coming in, like Joseph Goldstein, who's, again, a friend of both Sam and I. each teacher has their own emphasis, and you then start talking about applied meditation. So how do I use it how do I use it in my everyday life? How do I use it if really what I want to do right now is control my eating? So meditation, for example, we have a course on the app that talks about using it to not overeat. By the way, I'm terrible at this, but you can use your ability, your mindfulness, your ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it, to not overeat. Notice, I'm having this urge right now to eat, as I did last night, an entire bag of malted chocolate in my hotel room, but I can ride that urge and not do the thing that I know is stupid. So anyway, that's just a little taste of how you can take meditation and bring it in kind of numerous directions.
Do you guys feel competitive? You both have apps?
No,
his isn't even out yet.
Mine's not out yet. No, I feel not yet.
When his comes out and completely cannibalizes mine, then
we'll
yeah.
see how happy he is for me.
I actually
10% happy?
I'll be like negative 500% happier.
What's 10% of zero?
Yeah, exactly. No, I actually think I'm of the view, now that I've been in this meditation app business for a little while, I don't think it's Uber. I don't think the business model is that there's just one huge app that everybody uses and maybe there's some distant, second. I actually think it's a little bit more like fast food. I think there's going to be a bunch of big players, and you may switch back and forth. And so I think it's
does one need an app?
No, you don't.
But the thing that's useful, and it's really useful at any level of expertise in meditation, at least this kind of meditation, is having someone guide you.
Yeah.
It's like a mindfulness alarm that's constantly going off periodically over the course of 10 minutes or 20 minutes or however long you're sitting. And because distraction is just continually the problem. You're either meditating or you're distracted. You're either aware of what's happening at that moment or you're lost in thought. And that's true throughout your life. You're either hearing what I'm saying right now, or you're thinking about something else, and you don't know it, right? Or you're either reading the book you're intending to read, or your mind is wandering, and you're going to have to read that paragraph again. So this failure to concentrate, this failure to be able to focus on what you're intending to focus on, is just this universal problem of human consciousness. And so meditation trains that, and the other benefits follow, but the having a voice in your head reminding you that you're even attempting to be meditating is very powerful.
Yeah.
Even if it's your own voice. When I'm listening to a meditation that I recorded, just my own voice reminding me that I'm supposed to be meditating, it works like any other voice, and it's. So it's a feedback system that you can't really provide for yourself. Although you can meditate without an app, and most people do. And I've spent very little time meditating with apps. I just think they're very useful.
But both of us started meditating. You started meditating well before I did, but we both started pre the apps weren't around. So you can read a good book, and learn how to meditate out of the book, and just basically remember the basic instructions and do it. But it really is useful to have an app, especially for some people, because one of the biggest problems in meditation is this persistent fear that you're not doing it right. And so to have a voice you trust in your ear, just reminding you of the basic instructions, which are so simple but very easy to forget, it can be very useful.
I like the idea of it being like bicep curls for your mind.
Yeah. You see it in the brain scans. And now Sam will correct me where I run afoul of scientific accuracy here, but this simple act of sitting, trying to focus on one thing at a time, and then when you get distracted, knowing you're distracted and returning to your breath, is changing your brain when you do that. You're boosting the muscles, obviously the muscles I'm
Pathways.
using light loosely. You're boosting your focus muscle, and in many cases, whether there was a study in 2010, I think it was done at Harvard, that took people who had never meditated before, and they scanned their brains, and then they had them do 8 weeks of, I think, a half-hour a day of meditation. At the end of the 8 weeks, they scanned their brains again. What they found was, in the area of the brain associated with self-awareness, the gray matter grew. And in the area of the brain associated with stress, the gray matter shrank. That, to me, is pretty compelling.
That is. Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, we just did 3 hours.
Wow.
Wow.
Flew by.
Yes, it did.
Yes.
Thank you very
indeed.
much.
I've known a bunch of free divers, and I've known a bunch of jiu-jitsu people that got really into yoga, primarily because of Rickson Gracie. Rickson Gracie, do you know who he is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
famous, probably the most famous of the like the classic jiu-jitsu people. He's known as being the very best. He was like one of the original real pioneers of jiu-jitsu in America as well. And there's this documentary on him called Choke. Have you seen it?
I have not. No.
It's really fascinating. This documentary, he's doing all this crazy stomach breath stuff, the yogi stuff, because he's really into yoga as well for flexibility and balance and all those different things. And he was probably the first guy to introduce yoga to jiu-jitsu as well. But him and his son, who's also a world champion in jiu-jitsu, just stressed constantly that it's all about the breath and that breathing it's everything. That it's everything for jiu-jitsu. It's everything for martial arts. It's everything for your mindset.
You're going to find that in the foundation of so many different sports. I think a lot of that has been forgotten. I know that coaches in the 50s used to have their runners take a big mouthful of water, run around the track, and then they'd have to spit out that same amount of water into a cup to force them to breathe through their nose, to force them to move their diaphragms up and down a little more, because breathing is so essential to their recovery, their endurance, and their performance.
Yeah, one of the things I found interesting about your book was the experiment with plugging up the nose for, what did you guys do it for, a month? Is that what it was?
10 days.
10 days. And that 10 day, my nose was broken most of my life. I had a useless nose till I was 40, and then I got an operation to have my deviated septum corrected and the turbinates shaved down, and man, it changed my life. It really did. Like, I didn't realize the term mouth breather is a really interesting term, right? Because it's a term for a moron. But I felt like a moron. Like after I got my nose fixed, I was like, why didn't I do this before? Like, I was robbing myself of oxygen.
Yeah, and there's so much science supporting how injurious it is to constantly be breathing through your mouth. There's no debate about that. But what people don't realize is about 25 to 50% of the population habitually breathes through their mouths. And they don't realize the neurological problems that this causes, the respiratory problems this causes, problems with snoring, sleep apnea, even metabolic disorders. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So I had been talking to the chief of rhinology research at Stanford. We'd done many interviews over a series of months. He's a big nose guy. So he said, this is the most amazing organ. No one's talking about it. At the NIH, there's no school for studying the nose and its effects, and he thought that that was criminal. So he had warned me how bad mouth breathing was, but no one knew how quickly that damage came on. So we knew that after years, it can change the structure of your face. It's so common in kids that it has a term called adenoid face. If you see these kids with very long faces, because they've been mouth breathing so long that their faces have actually, the musculature and the skeleture have changed.
It changes your skeleton.
Yeah. It creates a longer face. So, and that also makes these people much more apt to snoring and sleep apnea. So, but no one knew if a month of mouth breathing would be bad, a year, like how soon those issues came on. So I asked him, I said, well, why don't you test it? You're one of the best universities in the world. You have the means to do this. And he thought, in his words, it would be unethical, because he knew how damaging that it could be for people. And so I volunteered. I said, well, why don't you test it on me? I'll get somebody else to do it. They had no money for this, so we had to pay for this study just to experience what that was like. And the point wasn't to do some like jackass stunt. It was to lull ourselves into a position my body certainly knew. I think I was mouth breathing through much of my youth, and that 25 to 50% of the population knows, and to actually measure what happens.
Now, do you think there was some bacterial growth that was inside your nose as well from this?
Yep.
Do you think that some of that could be attributed to just the act of plugging the nose? Because you physically plugged it. It's not like you chose to breathe out of your mouth. You actually you closed up the opening.
Yeah, that's right. And it could. No one knows for sure, because the less you use your nose, the less you're going to be able to use your nose, just like any other muscle. So when people start habitually breathing through their mouths, their noses are going to start to close up. And we know this from the doctor of speech-language pathology at Stanford. She measured people who had laryngectomies, holes drilled in their throats so they could breathe. She found between 2 months and 2 years, their noses were completely blocked. Zero air coming in. So the more you use it, the more you're going to be able to use it. So the less you use it, the more apt you will be to have problems with
what is the process? Well, why does the nose close up? It would seem that it's a hole. Like, why would that hole close?
It's not in use. Those turbinates, all those tissues just start closing up.
And so using your nose actually makes the opening wider?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
My nose got physically wider after my operation. It's really strange. Like I look back on the photos from when I was 40 on, my actual physical, and I attributed it to the fact that they put these big foam things and these plastic spacers in there, because the doctor that did the operation, I forget the period of time afterwards, I had to have these things stuffed into my nose and this plastic that was sort of sutured in place to hold it into position. And I attributed that to why my nose got wider. But I noticed it like within a year or two afterwards. I'm like, my fucking nose is wider. Like, it's different. Like, if I look at older pictures of myself, my nose was more narrow, and now it's more flared out. And I felt like it was because of that. But now that you're saying this, now I'm thinking maybe it's just from breathing out of it.
Well, surgical interventions are going to open that airway. There's no doubt about that. But we know the more that you breathe through your nose, the more that it's going to open up. And you can see this with people who are habitual mouth breathers, who are also joggers, who have just been breathing through their mouths for decades. They start breathing through their nose. At the beginning, it's really, really hard. They say, I can't do this. This is awful. Then weeks go by, months go by, and their noses open up and allows them to breathe through the nose. And the benefits of that, they're innumerable. So many benefits of nasal breathing. Not only oxygen, but it helps defend your body, humidifies air, conditions air, on and on and on. And this is something I just don't think a lot of people realize. And from the researchers I'd been talking to, they were a bit frustrated too, seeing so many chronic conditions tied to mouth breathing and how so many of those could either be improved upon or sometimes outright cured by switching the pathway in which you breathe. So
does breathing through your nose make your actual nostril opening wider?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I haven't seen any papers on that.
So it's, but my nostril holes and everything, it's probably just from the surgical intervention and stuffing it with plastic and stretching it out. And
I would assume so. Yeah.
Now, Wim Hof, who you reference in the book, he doesn't give a fuck about nose breathing or mouth breathing. He just goes, just breathe, motherfucker, breathe. Well, that's what he says.
Oh yeah, I practiced his mode of breathing all the time. I'm used to having his little voice in my head.
Why doesn't he care about breathing out from the nose or the mouth? He just wants you to breathe.
Because if we're breathing 25,000 times a day, if you're taking 500 of those breaths through your mouth, it's not going to really make any impact on you. I'm talking about habitual mouth breathing.
No, I understand. I'm just talking about through breathing exercises.
So what he's done is he wants to make this easy and accessible for people. Okay. So many people can't breathe through their noses. So they can't get that breath in, those 30 huge breaths you need to take, right? They take too long to do it. So he says it doesn't matter. Don't pay attention. You need to get that breath in. You need to expand your lungs. And for the rest of the time, the benefits of nasal breathing, that habitual breathing, is so important to health.
It seems so strange to me reading your book that I'm just learning this in terms of I've been doing athletics my whole life. How do I not know that breathing through the nose is more beneficial? How do coaches not know this?
This is something I just kept running up against over and over again. And when I first started writing this book, my friends, who are journalists and authors, they said, "You're writing a book about breathing? Why would you write a book about breathing?"
It's like walking.
Yeah. Well, there's a good new book about walking.
Is there? Really?
So they were ripping on me quite a bit until they heard some of the details of it. And the stuff has been right in front of us the whole time, and it's so obvious that no one's really paying attention to it. And the scientific foundation, all the research is there, and that's what makes these researchers, these scientists, so frustrated. We have 50 years of rock solid science here, showing the problems with mouth breathing, showing the problems with snoring and sleep apnea. No one's really been paying attention. We're treating all these separate problems that are associated with these core issues, and we're not looking at the core issue. And I think that breathing has to be considered along with diet and exercise as a pillar of health. Because even if you eat keto, vegan, paleo, whatever, even if you exercise all the time, if you're not breathing right, you're never really going to be healthy. We know that to be the truth.
So air comes through your mouth, air comes through your nose. Yeah. What is the difference between the air coming through your nose?
Okay. So your nose, if you were to take your fist, you've got a really big fist. So someone with a slightly smaller fist, and to take that fist and imagine just pushing it inside of your head, that's about the volume of your nose and all the sinus cavities. So they even stretch up above your eyes.
So the volume of your fist, that's crazy.
It's about a billiard ball. So a little, it depends on what size fist you have, right? So all, and they call it the nasal concha because it looks exactly like a seashell. If you were to split a seashell in half and look at it, that's what's happening in your nose. And all of this stuff evolved this way for a reason. So that air that comes in through the nose is slowed down, it's filtered, it's humidified, and it's conditioned. So by the time it gets to your lungs can absorb that oxygen so much easier. And the nose is really the first line of defense. Another amazing thing with the nose is it produces something called nitric oxide, which is this wonderful molecule that is a vasodilator that plays an essential role in oxygen delivery and also helps battle off viruses, bacteria, and other pathogens. So this is all happening in the nose, and slowing down that air and all of these other functions allow us to gain about 20% more oxygen breathing through the nose than breathing through the mouth. So you can breathe less and get more by breathing through the nose.
Wow. So breathing through the mouth, even though you're filling your lungs up, even though you're taking a big, deep breath, you're filling your lungs up, you're not getting as much oxygen.
That's right, because you can overbreathe. When people at a gym or when people are jogging, you see them really going to get the maximum amount of oxygen in. That's not what is happening to your body. So you are offloading the CO2. By offloading too much CO2, you're causing constriction in your circulation. So right now, if we were to breathe 30 huge breaths, you'll feel some tingling in your head. You'll feel maybe your fingertips will get cool, your toes will get cool. That's not from an increase of oxygen. It's the opposite that's happening. That's from a decrease of circulation. So your body wants to be in balance. You want to have the right amount of CO2 and oxygen for optimum delivery, and that's what the nose helps you to do.
That was one of the craziest things about the book, where you're talking about yogis that were able to vary the temperature between each hand.
No, on the same hand.
Oh, in the same hand.
The same hand. One area was gray, the other was red.
Oh, in the
same, not even this and this.
Oh, my God.
On the same hand. And, when I came across this, people are saying, this is impossible. There's, who did this study? Some guy in Taos in his garage. No, it was at the Menninger Clinic, which was the world's, at least in the U.S., the largest psychiatric research facility at the time. And a Navy physicist did these tests. It was reported in the New York Times.
Have they been replicated?
They haven't found someone who had the powers of Swami Rama. They found, I think, Wim's about as close as we've gotten to that guy.
So this is something that is like Michael Jordan didn't start out good at basketball, right? He learned, he practiced, he got better. And this, you could say the same thing perhaps about breathing?
Oh, for sure. And you just look at freedivers, right? I was at this, my first foray into that world was at the World Freediving Championship in Greece. And you see these people, some of them are short, some of them are tall, some of them are large, small, from all walks of life. Every imaginable country, something like 30 countries, had representatives there. And these people weren't born with these enormous lungs, right? They did this by the power of will, by breathing and expanding their lung capacity. And so once I saw them, all of these people able to do this, once they explained to me, they said, the benefits of breathing go beyond just diving deep. It can allow us to heal our bodies of problems. It can allow us super endurance. It can allow us to do all these things that we've been told are medically impossible. And I heard this, I didn't believe them, but I spent several years in the field talking to people at Stanford, Harvard, the best, the leaders in the field, and finding this research. And what they told me was absolutely true.
The idea that there's a guy like this Swami Rama, is that how you say his name, that he can do that, it's very appealing to me and very interesting to me, because even though breathing has been around for a long time, everybody knows that there's different styles of breathing, and holotropic breathing is pretty popular. And I always think, even though people know the benefits of many things, very few people go all the way with stuff. Like, if you just talk to an average person, can someone run 250 miles? Most people would say no. But I know people that have done it. So it is possible. But you have to find someone who go all the way and do it for a long time. A long time. So this Swami Rama guy, there has to be someone else like that out there.
Yeah, and they're probably not on Facebook, right?
No,
they're probably
in an
not
ashram somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this was a guy who grew up in the Himalayas, who by the age of 4 was studying yoga. He was meditating, he was breathing. So he lived his entire life in that world learning these tricks. And he got so good at it that he was able, on command, to make his heart beat 300 times a minute. 300 times a minute. So it was so fast, they were looking at the EKG readout, and they said, he's stopped his heart. Then they looked at it a little closer and said, no, actually, it's beating 300 times a minute. And then he would just snap out of it. So these stories sound so impossible. They sounded impossible to me, but it's all documented. So I just don't know in the modern world, do we have the capacity? Is there someone out there who's willing to stay off their phone, stay off Netflix, and focus on one thing for 30 years? I'm not sure. Maybe, hopefully, but who knows?
That was what was so interesting listening to the book. I was like, God, I want to know what's possible, but I don't want to do it.
let other people do it, right?
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't have that kind of time, man. But I believe there's something to it, because my own personal benefits that I've gotten from breathing exercises is one of the reasons why. That's what led me to your book, and especially in the sauna. Over the last year, I got a sauna in my house, and I've gotten really into. Well, I have a sauna here as well, but I got really into doing these daily sessions of 180 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. And as you can imagine, the last 10 minutes are really uncomfortable. When you get down, when it's 15 minutes in and you got 10 more minutes to go, it's not fun. But when I breathe, when I concentrate on these breathing exercises, and I have a bunch of different ones that I do. And one of them that I do is I concentrate on taking shallow breaths and holding my breath for as long as I can. And there's this panicked moment where you feel like you have to breathe, but you really don't. You really don't. You just got to get over that panic moment. And then there's like a weird calm that comes over. And you could last much, much longer than you can. And then when I do breathe in, I just concentrate on doing it slowly. Don't let myself panic. And through, time just flies by. It's crazy. Time flies by. And because I'm thinking about the breathing, I'm barely paying attention to the fact that I'm profusely sweating and my body's not freaking out as much. So I do these little weird tricks that I play on myself. Inside the sauna, and in concentrating on breathing and long deep breaths through my nose and holding it, and then long exhales through my nose, when I'm doing that, it makes everything easier. It's weird. It makes your body, for whatever reason, more accepting of the extreme heat.
Well, that's what I love about breathing, is it allows us these levers into systems that we can't otherwise control. So the autonomic nervous system is supposed to be beyond our control. It's called automatic. Can't control it. We can through breathing. You may not be able to control your liver function or your stomach or your heart, But when you breathe a certain way, you can influence all those functions. And you can start taking control of these other elements of your body, as Wim is showing, with not only the nervous system, but with immune function. So all of this was supposed to be impossible until he showed up and said, why don't you test me? Instead of just talking, we have measurements, we have equipment to test this stuff. If we can measure it, we can study it. If we can study it, we can prove if it's right or wrong. And that's what I find is so interesting and accessible about breathing as well. Even if someone has a pulse ox or you have a heart rate variability monitor, you can breathe in certain ways and instantly see what it does to your body. So people who say that this is a placebo effect don't understand that this is a biological function that you're taking control of. And if you can elicit such a strong response in a couple of minutes, imagine what you can do in a couple of days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And we're starting to see that with Wim and some of his minions and other people who have been breathing as a way to heal themselves of chronic conditions.
Yeah, Wim is a really interesting sort of he's a great spokesperson for it because he drinks Heineken and eats spaghetti. Like, he's a weirdo, you know what I mean? And he swears a lot and he's fun and he's silly. What I like about him is the fact that he doesn't seem like this mystical person that you can't relate to. He's very relatable.
Yeah, and I think that's where breathing really needs to move from this new aginess into a more pragmatic and practical area. And Wim is like the everyman, right? And he's gone and discovered these things, and now he's showing people how to use them. And he's very clear that he did not invent these methods. These methods have been around for at least 1,000 years, especially Tumo. And there's documentation that goes back 1,000 years, 1,200 years of people doing this to heat themselves up. They're like, I don't have a jacket. I don't have anything else to wear. I'm freezing. How do I keep my core temperature warm in these freezing temperatures?
Can you explain Tumo to people?
Yeah, sure. So Tumo is a breathing practice that is used to build heat in the body, build inner heat. And it was, the first documentation was from this guy Naropa, who about 1,100 years ago went off on a spiritual pilgrimage, ended up in the Himalayas, needed to heat himself and used this practice. And it stayed in the monasteries for hundreds of years until this Belgian-French opera singer anarchist around the 1900s.
Oh, that's a mouthful.
Yeah. I was going to include a few more because she did a whole bunch of. She's into free love, feminism. I mean, you name it. She ran the gamut. So, but she went on a spiritual pilgrimage for 14 years in the Himalayas when she was in her 40s. This is in the 1900s, which is just like unheard of at the time. And she discovered this thing. She said she was able to use this to not eat or drink anything at elevations of above 18,000 feet and walk for about 19 hours at a time. There are no fact checkers there to prove it. And nobody believed her until Herbert Benson at Harvard had heard enough of these stories in the 1980s that he went out and tested these monks and found out that they could do exactly what they had been told that they were supposed to do, for thousands of years.
And what is the technique of Tumo?
The technique is, it's very similar to Wim Hof's version of Tumo. The monks do it in a slightly different way. They slow down their nervous system, and Benson found that they were able to slow their metabolism by 60%. So it's lower than anything that has ever been measured before. So they just do and focus on a fire within the body and breathe out. Sometimes they breathe a little more. You can see videotapes of this. For people who don't believe this stuff, you can see videotapes of this guy in a cold room, no shirt on, sweating. They put a wet sheet on him, and he dries the sheet within about a half an hour because he's so hot. And he's only doing this through breathing. And
when you're making this noise, like, what is the technique? Like, you're breathing, is this like an 80-20 thing where you fully fill the lungs out and let 80% or let 20% out and then breathe in again and let 20% out, like that kind of thing?
That version is much more complicated, the type that the Bon Tumo monks use. Mm-hmm. So Wim's method does the exact same thing, but he's stimulating the nervous system. So his is 30 huge breaths, breath hold as long as you can. One big breath in, 15-second hold, and then out.
And what are these monks doing?
they're doing a slower version of it. So I have not practiced that version of Tumo.
Why not?
Because it's really complicated, and to do it right, you need to get the master there. And I tried to contact these guys, and they did not want me there reporting on what they were doing.
God, I would feel like if they knew the benefits of this, they would want the world to know.
You would think so, but what would we do with it, right? We'd
Sell
find it, we'd
Put it on
we'd
Facebook.
commercialize it, and so maybe they don't want the world to know, maybe they want to keep a few things in their back pocket.
So what do you know of what they're doing? Why is it so complicated?
Because so much of this is a mental practice. It's
So it's not
conjoined
just the
with
breathing.
No.
There's some sort of a thought process that goes along
Absolutely.
with it.
And to get that visualization and to be able to focus for that amount of time takes a lot of time. I think one of the reasons that WIM's process is so easy and accessible, you can think about whatever you want while you're breathing that way. You think about emails, think about what you're going to have for dinner. And as long as you're breathing that way, it'll do what it does.
And their method requires you to think about very specific things.
Think about a fire inside of your belly, moving your belly in and out.
But you know this.
I don't know every single step. No, I do
But
not.
what other steps could there be? Like, is there?
There's fast breathing, there's slow breathing, and there's a ton of mental focus. So there's like 20 steps that you have to go through to really get this right.
Are we in danger of losing this? Like, it seems like you know about it, but you don't know how to do it.
I don't know. I know the elements of it
Right.
and what I've read online, and who knows how true that stuff is, right? There's a few guys teaching this. One's in Colorado, and the others are in India.
Is he in Boulder? He must be in Boulder.
He has to be. Where else? But you think about how many languages that we're losing, right?
Yes.
Along with
Yes.
those languages, we're losing knowledge very, very quickly. And this is happening every decade. And so, especially if you consider what's happened to Tibet, to these civilizations that have been there practicing this technology of breathing for thousands of years, a lot of it's just disappearing.
Yeah, that's a shame. Have you thought about going there and like hanging out with those guys? And
I'd love to. Can't do that now. You know?
Right, of course.
I spent some time, the book, I talk about Tumo in about half of one chapter, and I wanted to cover it. WIM's been written about all over the place. People know his method, but I wanted to look at the science from it and look at the history of it, because the how is one story, but to me it was more interesting to find what's happening to the body. Why does this happen? Where does it come from?
Yeah.
So that's what I focused on.
So this gentleman that teaches in Colorado, where did he learn it from?
He must have learned it from the great sages, in Dharamsala or Tibet.
Or maybe he's like one of those kung fu guys that just fakes it.
Or maybe he's just, a faker.
Yeah, it could
He just made something up.
It could be. I don't want to accuse him. But in the martial arts world, that happens a lot. At least it used to happen a lot. There's a lot of fakers that have, the thing in martial arts world was always chi. And, you talk about that in the book as well, about people having this power, this chi touch. And it was 99.9% horseshit, meaning that most of the people that were talking about it were really teaching sort of a fraudulent, made-up version of martial arts. And there's a bunch of Instagram pages that are dedicated to these people. It's really to making fun of them because it's so strange. It's such a weird thing that these people do, where they have huge classfuls of people and they pretend to have this death touch and they touch people and the people they're essentially in a cult, and so they spasm, they fall to the ground. And it always made me laugh, but there was a part of me that says there's a thing in the body, and this thing can be activated, whether you want to call it energy or spirit. There's different mindsets and inspiration, and through these different mindsets and inspiration, you can achieve some pretty spectacular results, physical results. And people that are in this mindset, they can perform better. There's something about them in terms of martial arts. There's something about that. So I've always wondered, like, if someone really pursued this without all the nonsense, without all the chicanery, if you really pursued this, what could be done?
I think the first thing you do is get these people in a lab. If they're claiming to have these skills that are incredible, why not measure it? I mean, it's not that hard to measure stuff. And so if they deny having any lab work done or having it being measured, then I think you have to be a little apprehensive, and that's something that so much of this technology is cheap now to get. So even if you were to show up with $2,000 worth of equipment, you could see if there was some scientific basis to what these people are doing. But from my understanding, I didn't go down the chi hole too deep, but a lot of these people aren't showing up and volunteering to have their skills tested, and that's how science works. You have to test it, right? And it has to be replicable.
Well, everybody wants to be Swami Rama, but nobody wants to do what Swami Rama did, right?
Yeah, who wants to sit in a cave? Well, some people do. Sit in a cave for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
He would go away for years at a time in a dark cave and just sit there and breathe. So in the modern age, I just don't know.
Freak that guy must have been. God, I would love to have talked to him.
Yeah, he had it all down.
Because there are people that can do that. They're like the Unabomber of breathing. They just move to the woods and but without the negativity.
But what was cool about him is he wasn't the only one who could do this. So there were researchers in the 20s and in the 40s who went out with a bunch of equipment, whatever equipment they could cobble together, and tested other yogis who were able to do this exact same thing. Right? So Swami was part of this long lineage of people who had this knowledge. Is it still there? It could be, but again, I don't think it's online. I think you really have to get out in the weeds and earn these people's trust in order to get that story.
And what is the history of these people doing this? Like, what was their initial motivation? I mean, is there a written history of this?
The earliest evidence that we have for breathing practices dates back about 4,000 or 5,000 years from these little statuettes in the Indus Valley, which is in northern India. So there was this huge thriving civilization. They had paved roads, they had running water, they were dealing with tin and copper, and they had in this whole civilization, they still have not found any political or governmental buildings. They haven't found any religious iconography. So these people in some ways could have been more advanced than we are now. And they had all of these figures of these people in these yoga poses with their stomachs out. So that's how they date the earliest archaeological evidence of that. And since then all of these practices were moved into the Rig Veda and all of the earliest yoga texts, and they were codified in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. That's where a lot of the yoga methods come from, and that's about 2,000 years old. So
the methods predate all of that?
Oh, I'm sure they predate probably anything that has been in writing.
That's what's so curious to me. What makes me so curious, if you really think about what life must have been like back then, when they were creating this, you would think that people were hunting and gathering, and it was probably a very hard life.
Well, not in that civilization.
Right, but they got to a point where they had some sort of agriculture or some structures and buildings. But how did they get to the point? Because the rest of the world obviously didn't do this. This is not like common practice in Germany or in Italy or in all these other civilizations. Like, what made these people focus on breath work so much?
Well, it could have been, but we just haven't found anything related to that yet, right? So if you think about hunter-gatherers, we're imagining them as, man, they're just working all day, they're hunting all day, they're gathering. They weren't, from what I know and from what I've seen of the science there. Probably 3 or 4 hours of work, and then you have no other distractions to spend time and build these systems of breathing and health, which is what started in ancient China, which is what started in India, which is what started in ancient Greece. Think about all the distractions we're dealing with today. Constant interruptions. If you've already done your work for the day and there's nothing else to do, you're going to get more interested, and you're going to have the time to do some empirical studies to see what works and what doesn't.
It just seems to me that, like, learning something like that, learning something like prolonged breath work and the benefits of it, I mean, it seems like this is a really long-term practice that doesn't show you immediate benefits.
Yes and no. I think that you can take someone who has a serious problem, maybe someone who's already very fit. It's going to take a while to really see those big benefits. We see that with athletes with nasal breathing. It takes them weeks or sometimes months to really see gains in performance. But if you've got someone with a chronic condition like asthma or anxiety who are struggling to breathe every single day, and you teach them some basic breathing, some normal breathing patterns, their lives can be absolutely transformed. And we've seen this in study after study. So these people, their breathing has become so disrupted. They're breathing in such an unhealthy way that they don't know what proper breathing is. And just shifting that has a tremendous impact. So for people like that, they can see the benefits in a couple of hours, maybe even less than that. Someone with high blood pressure right now, if they're sitting at home, they can take their blood pressure and then breathe at a rate of about 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Take their blood pressure after that. And there's a good chance their blood pressure is going to go down. I've seen mine go down 10 or 15 points just by breathing, because your body is operating in its most efficient way that way.
And over how long a period of time would it take your blood pressure to drop that much?
After a few minutes, I've found it about 3 or 4 minutes of breathing this way. And they've found there's devices that they sell now which trains people to sit down, take a seat, and breathe in a certain pattern for 10 or 15 minutes. And they've shown marked decreases in blood pressure by that. You don't need this device to do this. It helps. It reminds you. All you need to do is focus on your breath, right? We have the technology in our heads. We have lungs. We have a nose. We can use that to really help optimize our health.
And what is the benefit for asthmatics?
The benefit for asthmatics is they traditionally, oftentimes mouth breathe, not all the time. They very oftentimes are breathing too much. So you see an asthmatic, that's usually how they breathe, because they are offloading all of the CO2. And by offloading that CO2, they are causing constriction. And they're so paranoid that they're going to have an asthma attack that every time they feel it coming on, they go, guess what happens when you start breathing more and more? You're causing more constriction. So they teach them to take control of their breath, to relax at those times.
So that's what hyperventilating is.
Yes. And there's a study done about 10 years ago. It was one of the best studies I came across, where they took 120 asthmatics, and the technology they used to treat them was breathing. They would have them bring around this capnometer, which would gauge their CO2. Every time their CO2 started getting low, which meant they were breathing too much, they would have them slow down and slow down their breathing. And within a month, they had a significant effect on asthma attacks and also respiratory health. Their airways got larger. So just by breathing, and this is a well-known study. It's available for anyone to look up.
So do you know what causes asthma? Is it just a genetic?
It's an allergic reaction. It's an inflammatory reaction. So there's different types of asthma. There's allergic asthma. There's exercise-induced asthma, which is caused by breathing too much. And a lot of people think, oh, I was born with asthma. I'm stuck with asthma. That could be true for a lot of people who don't want to take some additional measures to help abate the symptoms of that asthma. And I think we're just finding now a lot of really legit, solid science showing that breathing is implicated both in the onset of asthma, but it can also be used as a tool to help attenuate the symptoms of it.
So when if you were talking to someone with asthma, what would you, like my friend Hannibal, he was here yesterday, he was telling a story about freaking out on mushrooms and hyperventilating and had to get his inhaler. What would you tell someone like him who's an asthmatic?
I would first tell him I'm not a breathing therapist, I'm not a doctor, and he should continue going to his doctor and taking his bronchodilators. So I'm a journalist who went into this field with zero slant, with zero objective. Then I would tell him, after that disclaimer, that I would seek a therapist who has experience dealing with asthmatics and using breathing to help them.
Is that common?
They are out there, and they're starting to grow. Papworth method was developed in England in the 1960s, really effective. A system called Buteyko breathing has shown there's a lot of quackery in Buteyko, so be careful who you're using. So? A lot of people have taken up Buteyko techniques and appointed themselves as breathing therapists, and they don't know the basis of how exactly it works.
What is Buteyko?
Buteyko is a system of of allowing you to help you to breathe less and to breathe slowly. And it's been pretty extensively studied with asthma in particular. It's good for hypertension as well. So I would find a therapist who has a knowledge of this. Patrick McEwen has been doing this for 20 years. He's rock solid. He's done the science, and he cured his own allergies, severe asthma and allergies. And he said, why the hell isn't anyone else doing this? And so he stopped when he was a business major and stopped. And he's written like 4 books on this stuff. So it's
Sorry, what's his name again?
Patrick McEwen.
Patrick McEwen.
Yeah, Irish dude.
And breathing less. That sounds very counterintuitive to people. When you say breathing less, they're like, what are you talking about? You're supposed to breathe a lot, right? Like, the more you breathe, the more air you get, right?
Yeah, this is such a contrarian concept. It took me months to really figure out what was going on here. So most of us breathe too much, just like most of the population is eating too much. When we're taking in that much air, we're just breathing it back out. So 75% of the oxygen we take in, we breathe back out. So if we're just sitting here now and I'm doing this, I'm not gaining any oxygen. I'm actually making it harder for my body to offload oxygen into the tissues, muscles, and organs.
Is that because it takes time for your body to take the oxygen in through the breath and disperse it through the body?
Yeah, it's 2 things. So it's the CO2. When I'm breathing like this, I'm offloading too much CO2, and without that CO2, I'm not getting that vasodilation. I'm not getting that circulation, which is why just doing that, got a little lightness in my head. My fingers get a little tingly.
Just doing that?
Just from that. Yeah. Try, keep going. Okay. So as you're doing that, you're gonna feel a little dizzy. You'll probably feel some circulation problems in your hands and fingers. You can do this for 2 hours, and you'll really see what I'm saying. So the point by breathing less and deeply is to optimize each of those breaths as much as you can, to give your body more time to extract that oxygen. And you want to do that through the nose, because that pressure of breathing in helps the lungs in that gas exchange.
So if you know someone that has a deviated septum, you would instantly recommend them get that fixed.
This is what I have. So 75% of the population has a deviated septum that is clearly visible to the naked eye. So I've had my nose broken 2 or 3 times. So when they took a CAT scan of my head, I'm as more messed up as anyone. Nyack said, you are the perfect candidate for surgery. But I tried to see what I could do outside of surgery. I know people who have been just like you, have had their health transformed by it. It's very important. But there are also people who don't necessarily need it and should start by practicing some breathing methods.
So
or
you
some
didn't
other,
get surgery?
I did not, no.
Interesting.
No. And I changed my airways, and I changed how my nose worked over the course of a year. We took CAT scans before and after just by breathing.
You know how people get cauliflower ear?
Uh-huh.
Do you know that?
Yeah.
From calcified blood gets trapped inside the tissues. My nose was filled like that.
Yeah.
So I really did need surgery. And my nose had probably been broken. I broke my nose the first time when I was 5, falling down a flight of stairs, and then a lifetime of combat sports. I don't know how many times I broke it. It easily could be more than a dozen.
And that's why you are a perfect candidate for this, and it changed your life. Right?
Yeah, but it was surgery.
But that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Surgical interventions are absolutely necessary for a large part of the population.
I had 1/4 of one nostril that was open. My right nostril was useless, totally closed up. Yeah. I mean, when I would try to breathe, it would be like, nothing would go through.
That's bad news.
Yeah, I'd go to yoga class. They'd go, breathe through your nose. I'm like, my nose is useless.
Yeah.
And if you listen, if someone hears me from the Fear Factor days, and you listen to my voice, it's a different voice. It's a more nasally voice. It's because my nose is stuffed all the time. I had to breathe out of my mouth.
Yep. But for someone like you, now you know the benefits of nasal breathing, right? And
just the cardio benefits alone was crazy. It's like I gained 10% cardio instantly.
Yeah, and I've heard this numerous times by so many people. So what you're doing when you're breathing through the nose is you're slowing down that breath. You're taking in less breath, but you're using more of it. So by breathing less, you're going to be able to lower your heart rate. And we know this. If anyone has a pulse oximeter at home, you would think that breathing 6 breaths a minute, which is about 1/3 of what's considered normal, you think there's no way I'm getting enough oxygen.
Right.
That's impossible. Put on a pulse ox and watch what happens. And what I've found is your oxygen's either going to stay the same or sometimes go up. We even got on stationary bikes on the Stanford experiment. And we were trying to see if we could breathe 6 breaths a minute while going as hard as we could, and watching what happened to our oxygen. And our oxygen did not go down. Once we got to about 3 or 4 breaths per minute, it started going down. As long as you have these huge breaths, right? This huge circle, you're... And you can work out that way. And they've found, Dr. John Douillard did a bunch of studies of this in the 90s and found for cyclists who were normally breathing 47 times a minute, they were able to breathe at 14 times a minute by nasal breathing. So their endurance increased, their performance increased, and their recovery increased.
The instinct when you're exhausted is to... So what you're saying is you have to fight that instinct and breathe through your nose, and you will recover just as well.
I'm saying you need to slowly acclimate your body to this. That need to breathe is not dictated by oxygen. And this is another thing that's really hard to get your head around. It's dictated by carbon dioxide. So if you were to hold your breath right now and you feel that need to breathe, that's dictated by rising levels of CO2, not by oxygen.
That was another really fascinating aspect of your book. The importance of carbon dioxide. I had always thought of carbon dioxide as a waste product. When you were talking about that one researcher that was saying that carbon dioxide is probably more important than oxygen for life, I was like, what is this? Like,
That guy's from Yale too. Yandel Henderson. Check out his work. It's rock solid.
But that's so counterintuitive, right? To what a normal person believes to be true.
Yeah, and I wouldn't pick between oxygen and CO2.
Well,
you're going to lose. You're going to lose either way.
But CO2 is not just a waste product.
No, you need a balance of these two things. Everyone's focused on oxygen, which is why you see at an airport in Singapore an oxygen bar. You see a linebacker on the side of the field huffing pure oxygen. That oxygen for a healthy body is not doing anything. You're exhaling it back out.
So when you go to a high altitude place and they give you oxygen, that's nonsense?
No, that's completely different. High altitude, there's less oxygen. You absolutely need it. No, at sea level for healthy, right now you probably have 97% O2 blood sats, right? I probably do too. If you think about that, huffing pure oxygen, it might bump you up 1 or 2%, but that oxygen has nowhere to go if you don't have CO2 to offload.
Those bars kind of disappeared, didn't they? Like they used to have those in Vegas. Like you put tubes up your nose and sit there like an idiot. I remember doing that, going and trying to convince myself it was doing something.
Well, the low lights are doing, the air conditioning is doing something. The chaise lounge that you're sitting on is doing
relaxing
something. It's relaxing you. But I was completely stumped by this. And I'm not talking about people with emphysema or at altitude. I'm talking about healthy people at sea level or around sea level. And I kept asking pulmonologists, my father-in-law is a pulmonologist, so I asked him all of these questions, and he's just like, it's the biggest placebo effect in the world.
Wow.
And so I'm sorry if people are out there, oxygen bar owners, hearing me say this, but...
I don't know if they're there anymore. Like, when was the last time you saw an oxygen bar?
It's been a while, but who knows? Maybe they're going to be coming back.
Someone's
soon.
investing money right now as we speak. Listen to this podcast about the sign on the dotted line. What? Wait a minute. That shit's not real? And then, hold on.
I did see in a gift store, though, a bottle of oxygen.
Yes.
Like literally, you screw the cap off.
What?
Yeah.
Like a bottle where you screw the cap off?
Aluminum
That's ridiculous.
bottle of oxygen.
Those people, that's like a pet rock, right? Those people are assholes.
Yeah. I'd love to say they're laughing all the way to the bank. I'm not sure about that.
I don't think they're making that much money, but whatever money they're making, they're stealing. Now, why don't we have this? Why isn't it not generally acknowledged that carbon dioxide is very beneficial to life?
I think because CO2 has gotten this really bad rap. We talk about CO2 increasing in the atmosphere, acidification of the ocean, global warming. It's the stuff that comes off of rotting fruit, But we're not looking. A pulmonologist is going to know the importance of a balance of CO2. So people in that field absolutely know it. And so they've said, thank you for getting this out in the open, because people don't realize it. You can go outside right now, see people jogging, gotta get more O2 in. And the fact is, like, not only is that not doing anything for them, it's actually making their breathing worse and making it harder for them to offload oxygen, which is just something I don't think a lot of people realize. Like, slower, deeper breaths going to be so much more efficient, going to allow you to go further for longer. And that's really what you want.
So for athletes that are accustomed to having these really hard workouts, say like they're doing interval training and they're sprinting and things along those lines, CrossFit style workouts, and they're used to going, what they should do is train themselves to slowly take in air from their nose. And how would you recommend someone doing that?
There's some great therapists who can show you all the wonders of doing this. And by practicing these breathing techniques, you're going to increase, they've shown that you can increase red blood cells. So it's just like altitude training, and you can increase your VO2 max as well. So I don't know what sort of exercise each person is doing, and so you can't give a blanket prescription to everyone. Okay. So someone would have to be there and be, what's your heart rate?
Let's say running. Like, what if someone does like hill sprints or something along those lines?
What I've found is nasal breathing is the way to go. You can see what Sanya Richard-Ross, who for 10 years was the top sprinter in the world, obligatory nose breathing the whole time. And to me, the pictures just say everything. She's in these races. The people right next to her look like they're dying. She has the most placid look on her face. Mouth is shut, kicking everyone's butt across the finish line. So there's tons of research. There's tons of therapists that can work with people individually, because you just don't know how old is the person, what's their maximum heart rate, where they're going. So, but we do know that nasal breathing is a more efficient way of breathing, and you're going to be able to go further and perform better once that becomes a habit.
What's fascinating to me is the sport that I commentate on, mixed martial arts. There's a giant issue with broken noses. A large percentage of the fighters have deviated septums, smashed in noses, they're clogged up, and you see them breathing out of their mouth, particularly when they're tired. You see, like, when a fighter has their nose broken and you see blood trickling out of the nose, one of the first signs you see is they breathe out of their mouth. And that seems like, well, obviously it's terrible to get punched in the nose, right? You have this delicate instrument and you're using it as a target. But for someone who does get punched in the nose for a living, like, what can they do if they have this other than not do it?
I think do what you did, right? So if you're talking about these
but I'm not fighting
cases
anymore. If I was fighting, I don't know if I would get it fixed. Well, I guess I probably would anyway now that I know. But a lot of guys don't, because they think they're just going to get it broken again.
Well, for those extreme cases, they're going to need surgical intervention. If you can't breathe through your nose, you have to find a way. So Nyack, the guy at Stanford, told me, if your toilet is clogged, what are you going to do? You're going to find a way of cleaning it out and getting that flowing again.
And when it clogs again, just fix it again.
Yeah. That's one way of doing it, or you could make a permanent fix to it, right?
Yeah.
So that it's always functioning. If someone's used to getting punched in the nose every month and their nose is getting broken again, that's going to be really hard to nasal breathe. So I think that either they need to stop getting punched in the nose, or they have to make some other lifestyle choices. If they want to continue doing that, they're going to have a hard time nasal breathing. That just seems like simple physics.
But it's so crazy because it is one of the more difficult things to do athletically. And athletically, it seems from your work and the work that you're citing that it would be of extreme benefit to learn how to breathe through your nose, but yet most of them can't.
Yeah, and this is, I asked Patrick McEwen this, and he's like, when you're competing, you do what you can to compete. You do what you can to win, which is why if you see Michael Jordan, right before he dunks on someone, he goes, takes this huge breath of air. That one breath of air is not going to affect his endurance or his performance, right? It's about habitual nasal breathing and breathing while you're training. If someone has a bloody nose or if something is stuffed up there, you have to breathe somehow, right? You're going to breathe through your mouth, especially for boxers, Yeah. It is interesting, though. You look at any other animal in the wild, look at a horse running, look at a full-on sprint. It's never breathing out of it, ever. Look at a cheetah, like hunting down some prey. It's never breathing out of its mouth. Horses are, when they start breathing out of their mouths, they're in deep trouble.
Right, and dogs just do it to cool themselves off.
Thermal regulation. That's
Yeah.
right. Yep.
The carbon dioxide thing is a real trip. But when you're saying that this need to take a deep breath is really because your body recognizes the level of carbon dioxide is very high. What happens when you become accustomed to holding your breath? Like, what are there physiological changes that are taking place?
So this is what Dr. Justin Feinstein is working on right now at the Laureate Institute of Brain Research. He has found that asthmatics and people with anxiety have this extremely low threshold for CO2. So they need to keep breathing. They're so paranoid that they're not going to be able to breathe that they've become accustomed to. And whenever that CO2 increases, they freak out. So he has found by slowly acclimating them to have more of to be able to take more CO2 and become more comfortable with it. That's how they can change their breathing. That's how they can change their habits, which is exactly what those asthma techniques do, right? They teach these people to breathe less and to breathe slowly, to slowly acclimate themselves. Like someone with asthma or panic, don't go and start holding your breath as long as you can. That's a bad idea. Like let the body adjust.
Slowly.
Yes.
So I was recently around someone having a panic attack, and what she was saying is, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time breathing. Obviously, she was breathing and she was talking, but she was like, I can't breathe. What would you say to a person who's doing that? Just try to get them to calm down, slowly breathe? Like, what would you say?
I would quote Dr. Alicia Moret at Southern Methodist University, who said, the idea that people should be breathing more when they have panic is exactly the opposite of what they should be doing. So they should be, what is happening is their CO2 levels are getting so low, what they need to do is breathe more slowly or hold their breath.
Can you increase your tolerance for CO2 like this? Is that like a physical thing or is it a mental thing?
Absolutely. It's a physical thing. There are chemoreceptors right around here, right? And these are the things that gauge levels of CO2. So if you think about a free diver, what allows them to hold their breath for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes? They've gotten this threshold of CO2 that's very high compared to me or you or anyone else. You think about someone who's able to summit Everest without oxygen, right? They've got this threshold of CO2. So much of fitness, not all of it, but a lot of it is dictated by the level of CO2 that you can withstand, at least with surfing or with free diving or with alpine climbing.
So these receptors, you train them or they get stronger? Is it like an endurance thing? Like, your cardiovascular endurance increases, your resting heart rate decreases? Like, is that happen with these carbon dioxide receptors?
You can train them. Yeah. You can acclimate them to accept a higher threshold of CO2 so that you become comfortable with it. So one of the hard things about training to free dive is those breath holds at the beginning. You do these static breath holds, not in water, never in water, but on land. You see how long you can hold your breath, and they're miserable. People, maybe hold their breath maximum 2 minutes, but once you get used to it, you can go 4 minutes. Or
and what
5
is
minutes.
happening when you're getting used to it?
You are allowing those signals, those chemoreceptors are going off and sending messages to your amygdala, which is the area in the brain that dictates fear.
And you're ignoring them, or you're just accustomed to it?
You're getting accustomed to it. You are becoming more comfortable with it.
Because when I've heard of free divers diving 7 minutes and holding their breath for that time, and they're doing it underwater, and then I try to hold my breath, I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, why is it? Do I have a weak mind? Like, what is it? Why am I giving in to? What is that thing?
So what he's doing, he's found that he's been trying to train people in mindfulness and trying to train these people in breathing practices, but it's really hard because he can't be with them 24 hours a day. So what he's now experimenting with, and he's got an NIH grant to do this, is instead of having them practice these mini breath holds throughout the day, he's having them come in and take a huge inhale of CO2 because his hypothesis is that can help reset the tolerance of those chemoreceptors.
Fascinating.
And
it's a little shortcut.
Yeah, it's a little because it's the modern age.
Yeah.
No one wants to actually put in the work, right?
No one wants to be Swami Rama.
I think a lot of people want to be Swami Rama, just no one wants the 30 years in a cave.
Yeah. And what is his results of these people taking in the burst of CO2?
It is too soon to say. He's going to be publishing everything next year, the year after that.
Excellent.
He's in the middle of it right now. But the premise of it makes perfect sense to me. And this is why it describes and explains why so many of these slow breathing less practices are so effective for anxiety, why they're so effective for asthma as well.
Now, are there like specific coaches that work with people that have anxiety and use these like anxiety breath coaches?
Yeah, Dr. Richard Brown and Patricia Gerbarg, psychiatrists in New York. I believe he's at Columbia. They've developed this whole program, and most of it it's so simple that people think, oh, there's no way this can work for me, until they try it. So they bring in patients, have them start with this 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. That's it. You'd be surprised how few people actually have breathed that way in the past year or 5 years or 10 years. They've found that this method of breathing was effective for 9/11 survivors who had this awful condition called ground glass lungs. They had a bunch of gunk in there. There was no therapy to get rid of it. But this breathing pattern was able to do what no other therapy could do just by breathing.
What happened to the people that had this ground glass stuff?
Their lungs were filled with garbage,
right?
And they were constantly exhaling this gunk, right? And so by breathing slowly and by helping the lungs to open up and helping with that gas exchange with CO2 and O2, they were able to help them recover so much more effectively. And they've written books on this stuff, so they're a great place to start. If you want the how, they're legit too. They're leaders in their field.
And so this breathing in and breathing out cleared their lungs, or just made them feel better?
Had a significant benefit in clearing their lungs. Yes.
Wow.
And it makes them feel better. That's the thing. Like, there's no side effects to doing this stuff. Mm-hmm. If at the end of it you're like, I still have asthma, I still have anxiety,
it's not going to hurt you.
The minimum is you're going to feel better. And that's not too bad, considering all the other side effects to so many other therapies.
It's obviously, it's not a drug.
No.
What do you do?
What do I do for breathing?
Yeah.
People think that since I spent so many years writing a book about breathing, I'm going to be the best breather in the world. And I'm not. I've got a long, long way to go. My job as a journalist was to go out and report on this stuff, and then as objectively as I could. And along the way, I met people who had absolutely transformed their lives. So you can't help getting a little emotionally caught up in this practice and in these stories. And I learned a few tricks along the way. I noticed what a poor breather I was. I used to, at night, sleep with my mouth open for decades, right? I thought this was normal, to go to sleep with 22 ounces of water by the bed, wake up every few hours, dunk some water. It's completely not normal at all.
So you recommend sleeping with, do you use mouth tape?
Absolutely, yeah.
You tape your mouth up every night?
Yeah, I thought this sounded pretty sketchy until I heard about it from the, doctor of speech language therapy at Stanford, until I heard about it from Dr. Mark Burhenny. So what they've found, and Burhenny's been using this stuff for decades. This is not a fat piece of duct tape. People, don't go on YouTube and see what 9 pieces of tape down. No, you need a piece of tape that has a really light and easy adhesive, about the size of a stamp. You put it in the middle of your lips.
You do that even with your beard and mustache?
Absolutely. It's on your lips.
Okay. So it just keeps your lips closed.
So many people are like, how dare you write about this? I'm offended. Meanwhile, a quarter of the population has sleep apnea. Half the population is
I have
snoring.
sleep apnea.
Yeah.
I have sleep apnea, and I use a mouthpiece. I use a mouthpiece that presses my tongue down to keep my airway open.
As long as you have that airway open, that is key, especially at night, because sleep apnea has so many chronic problems associated with that, downstream from hypertension, metabolic issues.
But do you think I would still have sleep apnea if I use this tape and close my mouth?
There's only one way to find out.
Oh my goodness!
I don't know. I'm not here to prescribe anything, but this tape is free. You can do it. You can gauge. I'm sure you have some sensors to monitor your sleep. Do you have a pulse ox?
No, I just go to sleep with this mouthpiece on.
That would be a good thing to test it.
It seems like a lot of work. But let me ask you this: when my sleep apnea occurs because I have a fat tongue and a thick neck. A lot of wrestlers get this, and that's basically probably where I got it from jujitsu.
Mm-hmm.
But I can breathe out of my nose. So do you think that sleep apnea would still occur if I breathe out of my nose primarily or only?
It can, because the sleep apnea is caused by your tongue falling back.
So my tongue could
yeah.
fall back against that hole anyway.
It's less apt to with nasal breathing, because nasal breathing is going to tone your airways more. And I know from the Stanford experiment that I went from opening my mouth up the whole time. Okay, so 10 days, I could not breathe through my nose.
Right.
Within 2 days, I was snoring, had not been snoring. Within about 4 days, I was snoring half the night. I got sleep apnea. The other subject in the study had the exact same thing happen to him, even worse than me. The day we took that stuff out and we taped our mouths and were nasal breathing, the snoring went away. Sleep apnea went away. My blood pressure dropped about 10 to 15 points. So it's something that people can test as well. You can test the quality of your sleep, and it's not asking too much. And once I learned that this did not require a fat piece of tape, that the point wasn't to hermetically seal your mouth shut, which sounds a little scary to a lot of people, and it should be. It's just to train the jaw shut at night so you don't go.
I saw there's a device, not a device, like a neoprene strap. It goes under your chin and wraps around your head and keeps your jaw shut. Is that dumb?
There's all kinds of stuff.
But
I'm not going to say I haven't tried it. I don't know. I think maybe some people get some benefit from it, and that's great. I do know that tape is almost free. And I've seen some incredible results myself subjectively, but they're also doing some studies. And if you look at Berhenny's work that he's done for the past few decades, I mean, it's a quick and easy fix that can work for a lot of people.
And this is something that you use every night?
I use it every night. When I don't, guess what happens?
Yeah, your mouth comes open and you start snoring.
Yeah, and I wish that I didn't have to. I would figure at this time that it would become habit, but I'm not one of those people who have that really strong jaw that stays shut. My mouth just opens, and the difference in quality of sleep from doing this has been profound.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something else I wanted to talk to you about. You were talking about the changes in human diet and eating soft foods and how it affects the way the jaw develops and the size of the jaw, and that there's a way to improve that, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, and this was something when you set out to write a book about breathing, the last thing you think you're going to be doing is handing around a bunch of ancient skulls and looking at teeth. But that's where this journey led me. I had heard from some biological anthropologists that our faces have changed and that our mouths have gotten too small. And that was one of the reasons so many of us were breathing so poorly. And so I thought, well, this sounds interesting. These people are legit. I want to check it out. And if you take an ancient skull, anything older than 500 years old, 5,000 years old, 50,000 years old, you're going to see, by and large, about 99% chance these skulls are going to have perfectly straight teeth. They never had their wisdom teeth removed. They never had braces, any orthodonture, anything. They had straight teeth because they had these very wide and large mouths and these powerful jaws. If you start getting into the modern era of industrialized food, mouths start shrinking. So why do we have crooked teeth? Not from genetics. It's because our mouths have grown so small that the teeth have nowhere to go. So they grow crooked. And what else happens when you have a mouth that's too small for its teeth? You have a smaller airway. So this is one of the reasons why so many people have snoring, sleep apnea, and other respiratory problems. This sounded so bizarre because it's nothing I'd ever learned in school. But all anyone needs to do is look up some ancient skulls if you're online and check out their teeth and check out how they have these huge jaws, these big, flat, wide faces, powerful faces, and they all had this. And then you go into the wild, 5,400 different mammals, and check out and see how many have crooked teeth. The answer is 0. So some bulldogs do because they've been bred to have this flat face, just like humans.
Yeah.
But animals in the wild have straight teeth. And we did too. As a species, we have straight teeth, but because of industrialization, specifically because of food, our mouths have grown too small.
You would never believe that. Like if someone told me that, other than reading your book and kind of understanding where you're coming from, I would think this is nonsense. It's genetics. Just
Yeah.
like why people have small hands or people have big feet or whatever.
Well, it's become a heritable trait. So what's happened now is they've found, the researchers who've done this. Robert Corcini worked on this stuff for 30 years. Has 250 scientific papers on it. They found within the first generation of switching to industrialized foods, about 50% of the population is going to have malocclusion, which means a crooked jaw, crooked teeth. After that, about 60 to 70%. Next generation. After that, about 80%. After that, look around. That's us now, about 90%.
Jesus.
So if sorry,
No,
I was going to bum you out a little more.
Good,
So Dr. Kevin Boyd is now doing studies where he's looking at fetuses in the womb and is seeing their mouth size is too small, and they have this backward slant to their faces, just like I have, just like so many people in the population have. If you were to measure a skull and you were to draw one line from its ear to its nose and another line perpendicular to that, almost every single ancient skull would be above that line. Very powerful jaw. Now, 90% of modern skulls are below it. So they are behind it. So, and this is happening now. It is becoming a heritable trait. So kids are messed up to begin with, which is why so many kids have sleep apnea and snore now, which is so injurious to their health.
And this came about because they weren't chewing tougher food. They didn't need the muscles. And what can be done to sort of reverse that or mitigate that?
In adulthood, it's harder, and for kids, it's much easier because their muscles and their bones are much more malleable. But that's exactly what they found is once you introduce, we used to chew for about 4 hours a day. Okay, that's just how it was from the dawn of time to about 500 years ago. But as wheat started getting processed into white flour, as rice we started taking the germ and the bran away from rice, so it's just the polished seed. As things began to get canned and bottled, if you think about even what's considered healthy food right now, smoothies, avocado, oatmeal, all of this stuff is soft.
Mush.
Power bars.
Right.
So in adulthood, you can make some changes, and that's what I tried to do in my own face as a experiment. For kids, what they're finding is these problems need to be diagnosed very early, and they need to be treated. And what they do is they whiten the mouth to the way that they were supposed to be 500 years ago. So we're changing our bodies by force of will to the way that nature had made them before we messed them up.
There was a doctor that you were talking about that developed some sort of a retainer that actually changed the volume of your jaw as an adult and changed the volume of your mouth.
That's right. So I had crooked teeth growing up. I had braces. I had extractions. I had headgear. And me and everyone I knew had the same thing. It was never if you were going to get it. It's just when are you going to get your braces?
Right.
So the point of all those things was to straighten teeth, but they're not looking at airway health, right? So what happens, just as a principle, you've got a mouth that's too small for its face, the teeth are growing and crooked. You extract teeth from that, get some headgear and go. You're creating, at least there's a significant argument by many people in the field that say you're making a small mouth smaller. And one leader in the field, Dr. Michael Gelb, has said 50% of people who have orthodontics are going to have more breathing problems because of it.
Orthodontics meaning braces as well?
Braces are craning in, so it's a combination of braces and especially headgear, and some of that stuff is being phased out. Braces are still, you're forcing teeth into a smaller space to make them straight. So there's the very first orthodontics weren't craning teeth in to make them straight. They would expand the mouth, because even back then, 120 years ago, they knew our mouths were growing too small. They knew that. So the first devices, I thought this was fascinating. They were using this for kids who had cleft palates, had all of these other problems where they were having problem chewing and breathing. So they would expand their mouths with this device that went to the roof of your mouth, and it had a little dowel screw, and you slowly opened it up to expand the mouth.
What does it feel like?
It doesn't feel great. So this is where I think a lot of orthodontics is heading, because it allows you to have straighter teeth, but it also opens your airway.
But how long do you keep it in your mouth, like braces, all day long?
No. The one that I used was called a Homeo block, and this guy had been using it for 30 years, and I used it at night. So You put it on the palate, upper palate, and you have this little screw thing, this little handle that every couple weeks you open it a little more, just slowly.
There it is. Jamie's got a picture of it.
All right. So if you feel
that you used one of those?
yeah, I did. None as gnarly as that.
That looks intense.
But if you feel your head right now, you feel these sutures, right? These cracks in your head. You have one of those on your upper palate. So that can open, okay? That's what it's made to do. It can open and you can widen your mouth in adulthood. And I showed this through CAT scans. And by that, you can open your airway and you can breathe better.
And how long did you wear it for?
I wore it for 1 year. 1 year to the week I took the other CAT scan.
And you gained how much volume in your mouth?
I gained about 5 pennies worth of bone in my face, which is crazy.
5 pennies. So stack them up.
Yeah.
5 pennies.
Yeah, so
That's a lot of bone, man.
So we've been told that we can't grow bone past 30, right? It's just entropy. We're only going to be losing. We can stop it from disappearing. We can do some things to help prevent that loss, but we can't build it. But we can build it in the center of our face, in the maxilla.
So you can really change the structure of your face from doing. You could widen your face.
You can add more bone. You can model more bone inside of your face.
Do you look better?
While you're,
Do you think you look
can't
better?
you tell?
You're a good-looking man. But I mean, do you think you look better?
I will not say better. I won't use those. Maybe it just worse. People be forewarned. Don't build bone in your. No, I did notice after about 6 weeks of wearing this thing, people were like, "Dude, what happened?"
What are you doing? They could see a shift.
Absolutely, and it's very apparent. And you can see a bunch of case studies on this, and you can see it for yourself. And the neat thing is, it's not subjective. It's not. Well, I think I look different.
Right.
There's CAT scans, and there's metrics to it. So,
Yeah.
and it also opened my airways. It allowed me to expand. I don't know how much. It was probably maybe 15%, 20%, but it
That's
was
a lot.
mostly the toning of the airway.
Why did you stop using it after a year?
I'm still using it.
You are.
So for the research, I said, I'm going to do this for 1 year and I'm going to wear it every night. I'm really going to be dedicated. Even after having a few beers, I was like, the last thing I want to do is put this thing in my mouth and go to sleep. But I did it because I was curious, because I'd heard these stories, I'd seen the case studies, I'd seen the data, but I wanted to see what would happen in my own body. And I tell you, on a subjective level, I breathe more easily now than I can ever remember breathing. I haven't had pneumonia, bronchitis, any of those problems.
But there's a bunch of factors, though, too, right? There's the nose breathing, there's the breath work. So it's a combination of all these things.
Yeah, but nose breathing wouldn't help you build more bone in your face.
Of course. Yeah.
So a lot of that was due to this device not only spread open that suture in the upper palate, but also stimulated chewing stress. So on one side, there was this little bump. So every time you closed your mouth, you got some chewing stress, which would stimulate stem cells, which would go into those sutures and build more bone. The difference is when you clench your jaws right now, just like, you're boxing, you're intense, you're clenching your jaws, that does not stimulate that good beneficial chewing stress, okay? Because our bodies identify that as sympathetic stress. So cortisol levels go up, right? That means growth isn't going to happen. But if you think about eating a big piece of steak or a carrot, you're not chewing on both sides of your molars. You're chewing on one side or the other. So when you stimulate the stress on one side or the other, next time you're chewing on something, think about
I'm well
that.
aware.
That's why you salivate and you become more relaxed, and that's when that growth can happen.
So chewing on one side or the other stimulates stem cells that don't get stimulated if you just like biting down on a mouthpiece.
Because of cortisol and osteoclast, yeah.
Now, how often do you have this thing in your mouth now?
I took a break after a year to see what life was like on the other side of
How
that.
was it? Is it nice?
It's great. But I got curious. I talked to the guy who gave me this device, Dr. Ted Belfour, and he's used this thing for 30 years, and his case studies are pretty fascinating. And I talked to him. He's like, "Oh, we should do another CAT scan, see what happened." I didn't quite admit to him that I had stopped using it, so I felt a little guilty. And now for the past about month and a half, I've been back on the train to see what happens. So we're going to take another one just for kicks. I'm not going to write about it. The book's already done, but I'm curious to see what will happen if you keep wearing this, if you can really keep improving.
If you're the Swami Rama of orthodontics, if you could hold that bad boy in your mouth for a few years, I mean, that'd be really fascinating if you change your face and all of a sudden you have like this big Clark Kent, Superman type jaw.
Can you let me shack up here for a
Hell
couple of
yeah,
years? And
man.
I'm just going to focus on this all day.
Just stay in the sauna too.
Good.
Do what you got to do. So where would one get one of these things?
There's many different devices. So the one I used was the HomeoBlock. Ted Belfour can set you up with that.
Would you have to go to a doctor to get measured? Is that what you do?
You have to go to a dentist or an orthodontist would set you up with this. But there's many different ones that do the same thing. What a lot of people do, instead of having this thing in your mouth for a year, they go in, and this sounds gnarly. Apparently it's not as gnarly as it sounds, but they go in and drill in this thing. Yeah, and open it up that way. But people who have done this, and they're using this especially for kids, and they're using this for teenagers, repeatedly, their allergies go away. They can breathe better. They look totally different because they're expanding, because growth is centered around this right here.
So where are they drilling in? Like
the upper palate.
They drill into the upper palate and they put a device in there?
Yep.
So it's permanent. So you can't get it out.
Until they take it out. But it's much quicker. This expansion happens quickly over the course of a couple of months.
Oh, so you keep it in your mouth for a couple of months.
Yeah, and your teeth start widening out, and then they fix it. So Mariana Evans is an expert at this. Dr. William Hang, who's right around here, he's been doing this for 30 years. Very respected, and he knows this stuff better than anyone. So, yeah.
And what do they do for your lower jaw?
Nothing. It's
What
all
if you
about
have
this
crooked
upper
teeth
palate
on your lower jaw.
Well, they could use braces or something, but it's all about the upper palate.
Oh,
and there are some devices you'd have to ask Hang. They've got all the gizmos to do. The reason I thought this was so interesting, that this was how orthodontists, this is how teeth were straightened, right? 100 years ago, and then by the 40s. They found a way of making dentistry more of a production line where one size fits all. We're going to yank teeth, braces on, done. But this expansion takes a lot of expertise and a lot of focus. But what I'm seeing now within that industry, there's this huge moment of change where they've realized, so many people have realized that some of these processes might have caused breathing problems, and so they're reassessing how they've been doing things. And one orthodontist told me, he's like, we're going to look back in 10 years and be horrified by what we've done to our breathing. Man.
But it's so interesting to me that breathing and breath work and knowing how to breathe properly it's not common knowledge, but it's so critical to health. And it's free. It's not like, we're not talking about something that requires devices or like a long learning curve, or just some of these benefits.
Oh, so many of them, and especially the most simple ones, right? Anyone can breathe in 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. If you want to really go up to the next stage and figure out what breathing can really do for you on a bigger and more powerful level, you can do Tumo, you can do Wim Hof, you can do holotropic, you can do Kriyas, you can do pranayamas. They're all doing the same thing.
And holotropic, I haven't done it, but it makes you trip, right?
It's an interesting experience.
What was it like for you?
I know a lot of people have found profound benefits from this. They used it in a hospital. 11,000 people were put through this thing, and they showed it was more effective than any other therapy. Me personally, the science is much more thin in holotropic breath work. And what I had been told by the instructors kind of threw me off, where they're like, they sit you in a room and they blast music, and for 3 hours you breathe as hard as you can. And they told me that you're going to be able to enter into this space because so much oxygen is getting into your body. The opposite is happening. You're inhibiting blood flow to your brain, and so your brain is processing that as a threat, and sometimes you inhibit so much blood flow that perhaps your brain is interpreting this as though you are dying, which is why so many people have this reaction where they said, I am reborn after holotropic. And that's awesome. I don't want to take that away from anyone, but what I've seen is that there's been a ton of subjective anecdotal studies, not a ton, a few of them, but the actual science behind it, no one's gone into an fMRI and looked at what's really happening. And that's something I really want to do, and hopefully I'm going to be doing in the next few months, just for curiosity.
That makes sense if people are having psychedelic experiences, because many psychedelic experiences are tied to near-death experiences. A lot of people that have near-death experiences, they report these moments that mimic what a lot of people have experienced on psychedelics.
Yep.
So what they're doing through this holotropic breathing, they're not harming themselves, right? Or do we not know?
Not that I know of. The doctor who put 11,000 people in said nobody had any problems. There were no side effects. So I've heard that some people can freak out. I heard that there's possible bowel issues involved.
Oh.
And some real meltdowns. In the class that I took, I wasn't sure how much was psychosomatic and how much was actually because of the breathing. I had a pretty strange experience where a guy turned into a wolf for a while.
Whoa.
And
a wolf? Like a real wolf?
Went humping around the room.
Oh, so a guy, not to you.
Wish if it were a real wolf,
that would
have been incredible.
But he thought he was a wolf.
He inhabited the body of a wolf.
Maybe he was just an asshole. That's possible too, and just like acted out.
Or maybe he really became a wolf. We will never know, which is why this stuff should be studied. You know, there's a lot of talk that breathing this way will trigger endogenous DMT, and that's the reason people trip out so hard. I tried to do a study in which I would breathe this way, and they would take blood before and after, but the scientists that I was talking to said it would be such a small amount they wouldn't be able to detect it. So there's a lot of gray area, which to me is not a bad thing. It's great. There's still mysteries to breath. There's mysteries to the human body, right? And if people are finding great benefit from this and there's no side effect, then that's great. I just found it was a little thinner than the other techniques like Wim Hof method or like Kriya.
Now, this guy that had this experience and he turned into a wolf, did you talk to him before?
Awesome guy, super solid.
Normal?
Dude. He was a lawyer working in San Francisco and left and went to live off the grid in a cabin in Mendocino, which is completely legit and admirable. And he was a groovy dude. And afterwards, really warm, welcoming guy. So I don't want to take away any process that he went through. He said it was very cleansing for himself, and I think that's great.
You're a very nice guy. I wish I was
there. Who
there.
am I to rip? To rip on it, right? You know,
I understand. But yeah, I'm just saying you're a very nice guy with your disclaimer. I'd like to talk to him.
You know where we can find him. He's out in the tundra right now.
Yeah.
You got to go hunt him down.
Is he?
No, I have no idea.
Maybe, right? Maybe he's got like a caribou in his mouth.
Could be.
So this guy ran around. Did he have clothes on when he did this?
Yeah. He was scratching his crotch a little bit. And growling, and it got interesting. Yeah, everyone saw it, and again, you know, he was going through his process. That was cool, but the whole time I was watching him breathing, and he wasn't really breathing any differently than me. Because what you do is you have half the class are the sitters for the people who are breathing, and you watch over these people in case they have problems. So I was a sitter during this process. I was not breathing. I was looking at his respiration, it really didn't look any different. So I'm wondering how much of this is the set and setting of this. You're in Mendocino, you're at a hot springs, there's really loud music, fake lutes.
What kind of music is this?
You know, that's something I wish they could have worked on a little bit.
Death metal?
I wish. But it was a lot of like fake keyboard lutes and the fake tinny cymbal crashes. The Macam Hall.
That's the kind of music they're playing?
Kind of thing, yeah.
But that would seem like, you know, when you talk about set and setting, that would seem to be like a terrible set and setting.
Well, a lot of people enjoyed that music, and good for them. It would be interesting to mix it up with 3 hours of death metal,
right,
and just see where that would take you.
Or Zeppelin, something good.
Zeppelin, that would be fine.
Yeah, So when you did it, so you were a sitter, but then you also did it, right? Mm-hmm. And when you did it, what did you experience?
Well, it definitely affects you because you're breathing in a certain way. It's going to affect your physiology. So I got really cold. I got really hot. I got really spacey. I felt like I was kind of dreaming for a while. 3 hours is a long time to breathe as hard as you possibly can. But the shifts in temperature and in circulation, because the body's trying to compensate, right? Mm-hmm. So the more you're breathing, your pH is going to be, going down. So you're becoming more alkaline. So your body doesn't like that. It really wants the pH because all the cellular functions happen at a certain pH, 7.4. So to me, it was fascinating to feel my body fighting against this and constantly trying to balance itself throughout the whole thing. But it's definitely spacey. There's no doubt about it.
When you say spacey, what do you...
You are extremely lightheaded. You feel very high. I was talking to Ben Greenfield about it, and he said it was the most profound spiritual experience he's ever had just by breathing. And a lot of people say the same thing. Those subjective experiences are cool, but I think it would be a lot more interesting to find out what happens to everybody, not just one person when they do this, and to look at the brain and to look at the body and really analyze that to see if there's some physiological reaction. We know what's happening with blood flow to the brain. We know what happens to the brain when it's denied blood flow to certain areas. But how does that affect us psychologically afterwards? How does that affect us physically? I think these are good questions, and it'd be interesting to find out.
How long did it take you to feel like you recovered from that experience?
Pretty quickly. I went outside afterwards and drank a beer in my car and just sort of recentered. But it was mostly just the feeling of extreme lightheadedness, dreaminess, and then everything just sort of boils back down, and you're back in Mendocino at the hot tubs,
And when they sell you on this, like what when they have a class for holotropic breathing, what are they saying it's going to do?
Well, they can't claim any medical benefits because the FDA would come after them, but they say it is a spiritual journey, and for many people it is, and I think that's a wonderful thing that they're getting benefit from this, and they use this fuzzy language like that because they can't say it's going to help with your asthma. They can't say, but what's interesting is there are other methods like Kriya, Sudarshan Kriya, 60 independent studies. And is so similar to holotropic. The difference is you don't breathe super hard for 3 hours. You breathe extremely intensely for about 5 minutes, then slow it down.
But let me ask you about holotropic breathing first before Kriya.
Sure.
So holotropic breathing, what is the actual technique? Like how do you do it?
You breathe as hard and as fast as you are able to breathe.
So you're not taking big, deep breaths?
Whatever you want to do.
Whatever you want to do.
So you can
go... You can do that. And you're breathing through the nose, through the mouth?
Whatever you want to do. They say through the mouth is going to allow you to get more air in.
Is that real?
This was, You'll get more air in. Yeah.
Larger volume?
Yeah, for sure. And this was created in the 70s by Stanislav Grof, who was a psychiatrist, who was one of the first test subjects of LSD. And he started using LSD at Johns Hopkins and in other universities and found it had this profound effect for people with schizophrenia and other serious problems. It got banned in, 68? And so he wanted to find a way to allow people to have these experiences without the drug. And so he developed this specifically to mimic the effects of LSD. So, and he's written 12 books on this stuff. Some of the science, mostly the psychology of what's happening with it. I wish that there was some more hard science to it. There's not yet, but hopefully that's forthcoming.
And that number, 3 hours, is that consistent?
It's interesting. When I did this, and this was several years ago, it was 3 hours. So you had to go 3 hours. Now they're doing, I guess that was too hard for a lot of people. They're doing these hour sessions, which is news to me.
Again, everybody wants to be Swami Rama. Nobody wants to live in a cave for 30 years. 3 hours is America, man.
I think
that's too much time, bro.
You got it. But if you're going to go into that zone, I think you want the the full pie, not just the piece.
Yeah, I would imagine.
But I guess it's pretty hard for people to do that for that long.
I've had some friends who've done the holotropic breathing. One of the reasons why I asked you this, and these friends are pretty hardcore psychedelic experimenters, and they found it very profound.
Yeah.
They said that they could achieve states that are very similar to psychedelic experiences.
You hear that all the time. And
But you didn't find that.
I found it very lightly.
Lightly.
I did not go into the spectral universe.
And you've done that before? Have you had psychedelic experiences before?
I went to college, but I did not,
You went to college.
dabble too deeply.
All these disclaimers.
My mom's.
Oh, I understand. Okay. You can wink. Okay, I got it. Now, Kriya. What is the difference in Kriya?
Okay. So Kriya is a breathing technique that is very similar to holotropic breathwork, but the difference is it's much more controlled. So you're having these bursts of heavy breathing, but then you have these bursts of very slow breathing. And this was developed in the 80s, and they started opening up to studies. And there's, just as I had mentioned, there's been 60 independent studies showing how effective this stuff is and that have been done at Harvard, that have been done at legitimate institutions, showing how effective for some autoimmune diseases, for anxiety, for depression, for other issues. And what I think is interesting is, so you've got Wim Hof's breathing, which is very effective for some autoimmune issues, for some asthma, for anxiety. You've got Kriya, which is doing the same thing. So what I found in the book is people have been coming at this stuff from different directions, but they're coming to the same conclusions about these breathing methods. And these very hard and heavy breathing methods, people think, why do I want to stress myself out? So I'm stressed out enough with work, with my kids, whatever. When I breathe, I want to chill out. But that's exactly what these very powerful breathing methods do, is they focus that stress into one 20-minute time period, so that the rest of the time you can actually go to sleep, so you can actually be rested and relaxed. And that's what Wim Hof's version of Tumo does, and that's what Kriya does at all. Also, it stimulates that sympathetic stress. You're completely really going for it. You turn it on specifically so you can turn it off.
So what is the rhythm in terms of like how hard breathing versus slow breathing? What